In verse 4 it says, "We did not send any messenger except to preach in the tongue of his people in order to clarify things for them." I just love that because, the religion is not restricted to just a sect of people or a little group of, or whatever group of people. It's for everybody.
Praise God.
Yes. May I comment?
Yeah, I just want to make sure Brandy was done. Anything else, Brandy?
I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah, God bless you. Yeah, peace be upon you, brother. Please go ahead.
Peace be upon you. Yeah, the beginning of the first verse it says, "We've revealed the scripture, right, to bring you out of." Sorry, one second. Let me just pull that up real quick. A scripture we revealed to you in order to lead the people out of darkness into the light. And the caveat here is in accordance with the will of their Lord to the path of the Almighty, the Praiseworthy, because not everybody who reads the Quran gets guided from darkness into the light. In fact, they just go in either greater darkness or they go from the light into darkness. And when I looked up chapter 2, verse 257, we learned that it's the scripture is not what takes them out of the darkness or out of the light into the darkness. It's idolatry, right? I'm just going to read chapter 2, verse 257. It says, "God is the Lord of those who believe. He leads them out of darkness into the light." So as for those who disbelieve, their lords are their idols. They lead them out of the light into the darkness. And what I understand from there is that, like, ultimately, God is the one who gives you your guidance. And even if you read the Quran, you're not necessarily guaranteed to go from darkness into light. You can actually go from light into darkness if you commit idolatry. And the way I understand that is when we've seen it with like Quranists and stuff, is when they idolize their ego. That's how I understand it. If you read the Quran with an ego, or you idolize yourself or your opinions or whatever the case is, then the Quran will actually lead you into the darkness. Well, it's not the Quran, but it's this idol you've set up. I don't know if anybody else has commentary on that. But yeah,
Thank you so much. I wanted to comment on that, actually. That's an interesting point. So, verse 1 says, "A scripture that we revealed to you in order to lead the people out of darkness into the light." So, that's interesting because we are all born with a natural instinct to worship God alone. However, in spite of that, we are still in darkness. Many of us can be, right? So we are born with a natural instinct to worship God alone. However, we are not necessarily born in the straight path. So then you can have believers roaming in darkness and then getting led out of darkness into the light in accordance with the will of their Lord. So this is consistent with chapter 67. I'm sorry, chapter 65, verse 11. It says, a messenger who recites to you God's revelations clearly to lead those who believe and work righteousness out of the darkness into the light. So this is God's mechanism described here. Okay.
I'll
Next
add something
person.
to that.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, just really quick. It shows that the what's more important than even the Quran itself is the sincerity of the individual. Depending on who's reading the Quran, they're going to either be brought to light or brought to darkness. There's a verse in the Quran that says, let me pull it up. Same time. It is 1782. So I'll put it in the chat. 17. It says, we send down in the Quran healing and mercy for the believers. At the same time, it only increases the wickedness of the transgressors. Same book, two completely different outcomes.
I want to just keep adding on this because this is like a big topic these days, right? Like we have to follow the Quran alone. And this gets twisted to extricate a certain meaning, right? Like basically, we don't obey anyway, not even messengers. We just obey the Quran, etc., and so on and so forth, right? Um, oh man, I don't know why the comment completely slipped my mind, but yeah, the comment completely left my mind. But look, God's running everything. I apologize.
Praise God. Okay, so for everyone that joined after, we read from the beginning of chapter 14 through verse 9. Verse 3 is really important, right? What's our priority? It says, the disbelievers are those who give priority to this life over the hereafter. They repel from the path of God and they seek to make it crooked. They have gone far astray. So we need to give priority to the next life, and then God, if He wills, He'll give us this life as well.
I'll
Peace
make
be upon you. Oh yeah.
Oh, go. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you, Brother Do. Peace be upon you all. Mashallah. Some good comments. I wanted to add this idea of mashallah, Brother Dude recited 1782 and how the Quran can affect different people differently, and a reference verse 5679, none can grasp it except the sincere. As it was said, the sincerity is really important. And I wanted to add that it seems to me, my understanding is that those who are not sincere, they don't grasp it. Like this verse says, none can grasp it except the sincere. They don't understand the verses. And when there's misunderstanding of the verses, then and people can then use it, and sometimes depending on people's intentions, um, people can use it in ways that are not righteous. And I mean, simply just not understanding it, then they can take things out of context and apply things in a way that's not right. And then there's times where people even may do this deliberately, use things for their own agendas, unfortunately. Um, so yeah, I just wanted to add that. Thank God for the guidance, and because it's precious and valuable. Thanks.
Mashallah. Good comment. I wanted to tie this back to the concept of the light. Cyber Sufi made a comment in the chat. Can you speak by chance? I think it was a good comment.
And he was saying that people from any background, like they're born into a specific system, but like when you talk to them, they will essentially admit that they do believe in just one God. They believe in like they already are a believer in a sort. Like but they haven't been shown that there is a path or something that aligns with that innate, thought that they have in their minds. And so when they see it, they'll instantly be like they should be convinced if they're earnest and they're sincere that they will recognize it as the light from their God and that they will follow it. But unfortunately, some of them they won't see the light in their lifetime, and that they'll be persuaded by the idols instead. Because they do feel something though, and I think that if they are looking, eventually they'll come to the right side.
Yeah, beautiful. I wanted to play off that, this concept that even though someone's in darkness, that there's still potentially hope for them if they're, alive. In Surah 24, verse 40, God talks about different allegories of light. And in this verse, it says, another allegory is that of being in total darkness, in the midst of a violent ocean, with waves upon waves, in addition to thick fog, darkness upon darkness. If he looked at his own hand, it doesn't say he cannot see it, right? Because think about this. It's talking about all this darkness. You're in the midst of complete pitch black. It says when he looked at his hand, he could barely see it. Whomever God deprives, he will have no light. I mean that no matter how lost someone thinks they are, if they have sincerity and genuinely try to find God's light, they will have remnants of it. And God tells us, those who transgress the limits, never underestimate, God's mercy. That God possesses infinite mercy, and it's one of those things that people, they have this tendency, they think, oh no, I'm too far astray, I'm too lost, I've done too much sin, and God is giving them every excuse to abandon their old ways and come to His way, saying that He'll transform their sins into credit, right? He'll make up for them everything that they felt like they've lost, and all it takes is just a mere killing of their ego.
It's actually really good. For some reason in my mind, I always even though I read like they barely see it. For some reason, in my mind it registered as like they can't even see their hand. But if you're in total darkness upon darkness, you shouldn't be able to see your hand. But it's interesting that it says they can barely, which means there's still some visibility there. Which I guess is like God's doors of mercy, like you're talking about. Like it's always open. It's always going to be open for if you want to. Praise God. But the darkness upon darkness, from what we understand, this is exile from God. Like the subheading for that says exile from God. And then I wanted to tie this in with 14:3, as well as well, why is the chat jumping so much? 14:3, where it talks about what is your priority. And it says they are the ones who give priority to this life over the hereafter, or fall from the way of God and seek to make it quicker they've gone for astray. Just tying in priorities with 16:107, which is preoccupation. It says preoccupation with this life leads to exile from God. And then it talks about people who like basically don't make it, and it says this is because they have given priority to this life over the hereafter, and God does not guide such disbelieving people. It's really important that we organize and schedule our lives around God, and not the other way around. We make it to, if you can, Jummas, and I understand sometimes things may be far away. You got like maybe like an hour drive, but it all comes down to like your perspective of how you look at it. Like, oh man, I have to drive an hour to Jumma, or I'm gonna drive an hour just to get to Jumma. It's just a simple shift in mentality really helps an individual with their priorities. And it's really important that we get our priorities straight.
Praise God. For those who joined, we read Surah 14, Ibrahim, from 1 through 9. If anyone else has any comments or questions about the verses.
If nobody else does, I just wanted to just keep hammering that point a little bit, especially for any like new submitters. Is just really please, like I encourage you, like always make God a priority, always make Quran studies a priority. Never kind of let that go. Don't go weeks without joining a Quran study or being with submitters and like reflecting on God and glorifying God. Because I've seen it many times, and I'm sure everybody else who's been a submitter longer than me, I've been for 10 years, who have been longer than me, they've seen this when submitters come, they embrace the religion. Um, and then they kind of stop coming around, they stop doing Quran studies, they stop reflecting on God. And this is very detrimental. I've seen so many people kind of drop out or go in a very weird direction, and just kind of the quality of their faith and their understanding and the guidance just it goes down, and this is not to scare anybody, but it's just to I really want to emphasize the thing of priorities. I've seen when newcomers come, they're very excited, they're very happy, and at the beginning they come quite a bit, and then they just kind of tapers off, and in the beginning they would go out of their way to come to the masjid, the Quran studies, and then over time, as their priorities kind of shifted, they started making excuses when several months or a year ago they would have found an excuse to come. So just really want to encourage all of us to keep steadfast, kind of like.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Welcome.
Well, my comment is related to verse 5. Thus we sent Moses with our miracles, saying, lead your people out of darkness into the light and remind them of the days of God. So here we have a parallel with verse 1 and what you all have been commenting about, the different meanings of one moving from darkness into the light, and that this is because of God's will, God's guidance. It doesn't make any difference whether or not a people have been recipients of the scripture. Obviously, the people of Moses or the Hebrews had received previous scripture, inasmuch as, David and Solomon and what have you. But it says, lead your people out of darkness into the light and remind them of the days of God. Anyone want to comment and help clarify this for me and others? Because this also suggested this darkness, we're not, God has to continually guide us out of the darkness and increase our light through his guidance. So if anybody has any more comments or insight on verse 5 here, thank you.
Peace be upon you all.
Peace.
Peace be upon you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I want to pay attention, what's the word? I want to highlight or point out the wording of the language of the verse from the same two verses, verse 5 and verse 1. It says, it uses the word lead instead of guide, which is just to confirm that as human beings, like Moses, messengers, and guided people, or anyone at all, right? Our only function, all we can do is lead people. We can act as leaders. We can spread the message as much as we can. But ultimately, God is the only one who is capable of guiding people out of the darkness into the light and to the straight path. So, as I'm seeing here, verse 1 also says that the scripture is used to lead the people out of darkness in accordance with the will of God. So it also confirms that even the scripture cannot guide. The scripture just acts as is used to lead the people. That's the basis for which we can actually lead the people, which other people can lead each other. But when it comes to guidance, whether or not you are guided, whether or not you are righteous or a disbeliever or an idol worshiper, that depends on God and God's judgment on you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh,
Just quick question for Douglas. Douglas, is the question then just in regards to the focusing on the leading your people out of darkness into light, or the expression the days of God?
The latter, the expression of the days of God. Remind them of the days of God. You're correct. Alhamdulillah. Praise God. Because this is a reminder to them as well, right? Of what happened to the previous communities that rejected God's sign and rejected what the previous messengers had shared among their ancestors and what have you. Joseph, Ibrahim, you hit the nail on the head in that sense, yes. I'd like, anyone would like to elaborate on that further, just that Moses, there is no movement out of darkness into the light without Hidayah, without God's guidance. We all agree. But just simply because people have received a previous scripture of messengers, that doesn't absolve them of being held accountable. That doesn't absolve them of, so to speak, practicing what they preach or what they claim. And that's where I'm going with this. Thank you.
I wanted to give a comment about verse 4. It says the messenger's language. We did not send any messenger except to preach in the tongue of his people in order to clarify things for them. I thought this was really interesting and befitting that the latest messenger that we know of is God's messenger of the covenant, Dr. Ishaq Khalifa, and he preached in English in America. Now, what's beautiful about English, there's many things that are great about it, but the usage is very much used in the world, and with the advent of technology, it's the easiest language to translate to other languages. So it's the most accessible language, universally. So it's really interesting. And so you have this person in the United States preaching in English, so we can all access. And then if someone needs a translation, we can translate it, easier than ever. And it's getting more and more easier to translate it to other people. So this makes sense that it's going to be in English, and also it's coming at this time where we can access his content. Because if this messenger came 100 years ago or 200 years ago, we would not be able to access his teachings, right, to his preaching. So there was a window of time, let's say between the 1950s, 60s to early 1990s. That was the window in the last 1400 years that this was appropriate for a messenger to come to record information in this way for future people to access. And he came in that window exactly. And now we have information from God, clarifications regarding our religion to be able to uphold. So it's a big blessing. Thank you.
Regarding Douglas's question or comment, I go back and forth regarding what does that mean, the days of God. The expression only occurs twice in the Quran, as far as I know. The other one is in Surah 45, verse 14. Let me put it in the chat. And the concept of remind might be something that happened in the past, or for something that's going to happen in the future. Like if you have a due date coming, you'd say, oh, hey, remember, you got this paper due on this date. It's a reminder. My take is that the days of God are the hereafter, because in this world, God has given individuals the ability to choose, to deceive, to promote their own ideas, their opinions that can be contrary to the truth. But in the hereafter, that ability is gone. The only people who are going to be able to speak are ones that God chooses, and they're only going to be able to speak the truth. There is no more, Satan giving his side of the argument. Those days are past. And the days of God is when God basically declares his absolute sovereignty. And what's interesting is if we read like the key, there's a subtlety here. It says, let me just put it in. Okay, so it says, most gracious, most master of the day of judgment. Oh, sorry, Lord of the universe. Sorry, I missed the words. Lord of the universe, master of the day of judgment, right? Lord has a higher, how do you put it, status than master. It's interesting that God introduces, himself in that way. And my takeaway from it is that in this world, again, he allowed people the freedom of choice. He allowed Satan to make his viewpoint, to share it with people. And, in the hereafter, that ability is gone. That's my take as far as what it means in regards to the days of God.
Mashallah. I wanted to add, that's my understanding as well. And mashallah, Brother Dude talked about how at that time, here Satan has the God has given him this potential to try to be a god beside God, which he can't, of course. There, it's the test is over. It's all God. I mean, even here, God is ultimately in control. He has the final say and final decisions. But there, mashallah, he expressed it well. I just wanted to add to that that in the hereafter, God is also physically present, because we know here our world cannot stand the physical presence of God. And so it may be related to that as well, that um, this is the abode, the hereafter is the abode, the where God is physically present. Thanks.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions or comments about the verses we read? Okay. Verse 9 is also important. Talks about the messengers, the people of Noah, Ad, and Thamud. Says their messengers went to them clear proofs, but they treated them with contempt and said, "We disbelieve in what you were sent with. We are skeptical about your message, full of doubt." So, we know the criteria for believing a messenger in the Quran is very simple. Just 3 minimum criteria. Preach the worship of God alone, never ask for a wage, and come with solid proof. If the messenger fulfills each of these 3, then we should accept him. If we don't accept him, then we're in for a rude awakening. So God's system is simple, He makes it easy for us to access his religion, his message. Right? If somebody's coming to you with very convoluted, confused systems for accessing the truth, or it's more esoteric or limited, then it's probably not the truth. And we hear a lot of that here. Very confused understandings of the concepts in religion. Okay, anybody else have any comments?
I'll add
If
something to the previous verse. It says, "We did not send any messenger except to preach in the tongue of his people in order to clarify things for them." The reality is the prophet Muhammad, when he came, he's speaking the Quran in perfect Arabic that the people at his time understood. The reality is today, no one speaks 7th century Qurayshi Arabic. They still don't even fully understand the grammar. Like you can see, the grammarians dispute with each other. And this leads to some open-endedness in regards to the understanding of the Quran. And by God's leave, sending a messenger who's speaking in English, clarifying these stuff, it gives us no excuse. We can't say that, oh, we didn't understand, we didn't make sense. But then ironically, those who reject, the function of the messenger, that his duty is to clarify, and they say, no, we don't need, the messenger. He just told us to follow the Quran. We'll figure it out on our own, are doing the very thing that mentions in verse 9. It says egotistic defiance, a human trait. Right? It says their messengers went to them with clear proofs, but they treated them with contempt and said, "We disbelieve in what you are sent with. We are skeptical about your message, full of doubt." Right? This is the same thing. And it's funny, people have this trust when it comes to the previous messengers. But every time the messenger that goes to them specifically, they say, okay, this guy, I don't know if I should put him in the same caliber as the previous messengers. He's clearly off the mark. We shouldn't take him at face value as far as what he's stating or what he's saying. And it just shows that they're really making a distinction among God's messengers when they do that. If you read Surah 26 consistently, they all come saying the same thing. I'm God's messenger to you. You shall reverence God and obey me. then they preach God's message. Then it's our duty to say we hear and we obey. But it's the ego that wants people to say, okay, hey, he just told me to worship God, or he just told me to follow the Quran, and then I'm just going to do it my own way, and discard the very function of what a messenger is here, which is to clarify things for people.
That's fantastic. I put it in the chat, chapter 26, 143 to 145. I am an honest messenger to you. You shall reverence God and obey me. I do not ask you for any wage. My wage comes only from the Lord of the universe. Now, obviously, this is the same as messengers and non-messengers. I mean, I tell people here all the time, look, I'm not asking you for a wage. I'm just inviting you to say, there is no God except God. La ilaha illallah. That's it. Realistically, that's what we're inviting people to here, right? And we get happy to see people proclaim this. Brother Julius put a comment in the chat about the relevance about language in chapter 6, verse 92. The footnote there says, today's most important community is America, where God's message is being restored, where the Quran was revealed. When the Quran was revealed, Mecca was the most important community. Now, this is interesting. I didn't understand this for a while, but if you look at the trade routes and the directions they had to go, Mecca was actually very, so basically in the Jerusalem area and India, the trade routes, at least on sea, went through Mecca because of the water body next to Mecca. So it was a significant direction. We're talking about the Red Sea, right? So you to get from India and those places into Egypt, Israel area, this kind of region, you had to go from the Gulf of Aden to the Red Sea. And Mecca is one of the few settlements in all of Saudi Arabia. There's a nice YouTube video about this. I'm going to share it in the chat, God willing. Okay, yeah. If there are more comments, we can continue reading the verses. If anyone else has any more comments about these verses, in chapter.
I wanted
4.
to.
Okay.
Yeah, to emphasize, this is interesting. So 5 times, right, in Surah 26, you have 5 different messengers. They all come preach the same thing. I am an honest messenger to you. You shall reverence God and obey me. I do not ask you for any wage. My wage comes only from the Lord of the universe. This is the consistent message you can say, every messenger says to their people. Now, what's interesting is this expression only shows up one other time in 44:18. And this is right after, again, the discussion regarding the messenger of the covenant and the smoke prophecy, right? It says, in context, we have tested before them the people of Pharaoh. An honorable messenger went to them proclaiming, listen to me, O servants of God. I am an honest messenger to you, and do not transgress against God. I bring to you powerful proofs. I seek refuge in my Lord and your Lord if you oppose me. If you do not wish to believe, then simply leave me alone. Subsequently, he implored his Lord, these are wicked people. God said, travel with my servants, and in the night you will be pursued. Right? So this is like a consistent theme. But everyone always thinks that, okay, hey, yeah, those previous messengers, I'll totally, if they told me to do something, oh yeah, I'd believe it, without hesitation. Whatever messenger comes to them at that time and place, they're like, oh, not this guy. This guy's different.
Yeah, praise God. We were having a conversation yesterday about this concept. We were talking about, look, if the messenger tells you to do something, we just do it. And it's easy for people to say it in the past, Yeah, if I was with Noah, I would do whatever Noah said. Oh, yeah, if I was with Abraham, I would listen. Yeah, of course. If I was with Muhammad, I'll do it. But then if there's a messenger like in front of them and they actually accept them, they struggle. This is funny because We had people affiliated with submission coming here saying, like, look, to figure out the contact prayers, you have to go to the Bible and piece together how Jesus prayed, right? And this is somebody that accepted the messenger of the covenant. It's like you have the messenger of the covenant on video, messenger of God showing you how to pray. Yet instead of using that, you're going to the New Testament and trying to put together and claim Jesus prayed this way, and that's what we're supposed to do. It runs counter to the entire concept of God giving instructions through the messengers. I put the video in the chat. You can watch it later, but you can save it. But I believe about this is a long, no, it's about 30 minutes. It's a long video, but about 12 minutes in, it explains the trade routes and why Mecca was, we see as the most important community. It's interesting that it says everybody, or at least almost 90% of people in Saudi Arabia live in the yellow lines. Anyway, that's in the old era. Now in the new era, as we were saying, we're in the United States of America, and this is the most influential country on earth. And we were talking about this last night. Well, why is it that the only people that are coming to submission, they're from Middle Eastern or Muslim backgrounds, right? And my response was that, well, that's just where it's been up to now. But eventually, because Muslims make up, I guess, less than 1% of America, this will reach mainstream of American society. So we just have to get ready for that. We need to break free of this concept of thinking within the confines of Islam, Muslims, and Arabic culture or Middle Eastern culture. We need to break free of that. We need to be more universal in our presentation of God's religion, because this is for the whole world. It's not just for Middle Eastern people. This is God's religion for the whole world. There's billions of people on earth. And Middle Easterners, Arabs, or Muslims are only a minority. So I would just read 4 paragraphs from this preface message to the New World. I believe this is from June 1988, submitter's perspective. It says, God loves America. America was founded on the principle of religious freedom. The American currency is the only currency in the world that proclaims in God we trust. In America, the people enjoy greater freedom than anywhere else in the world. That's why America is God's most beloved nation. Freedom is God's most precious gift, and those who infringe upon God's gift alienate God and are exiled from His grace. God has blessed America generously. God is at the top of the world economically, culturally, scientifically, militarily, and morally. And I will argue in many of these it's even more today than it was 35 years ago. So it is inevitable. So we need to prepare ourselves for this. And if we want to partake in the striving before the victory, the opportunity is now. Sorry for a long comment. Anybody else want to make a comment?
Mashallah. Oh, yeah. Please go ahead, sister.
Oh, you go ahead. I'll go after you. God willing.
Oh, God bless you. Okay. Yeah, mashallah. It's good common reminder that this is for the whole world. And earlier we were talking about verse 3, what is your priority? And mashallah, I think it was a good comment and reminder as well about being careful that we don't let our faith slip. And those of us who have been on the path for years have seen this happen. And I think it is a good thing that we need to keep striving, and community is a great blessing that God has given us as a support. You could have designed things so that we're here just as individuals on our own, each person. However, God provided family unit, community unit, and a good community can be a great support in the path of God and worshiping God alone. We can do Friday prayers together, Quran study, striving in other ways. And I encourage everyone to also strive with the local community, if there is a local community. If there isn't, to try to give the message with God's help and create and develop a local community. The online is good, mashallah. That's a blessing as well. However, it's a local community that we can do Friday prayer with, and it's a lot more powerful when one is there in person. One can focus more easily, and it's just another level of it's a whole other level of support and uh, faith. It's another whole level of I think benefit is what I'm trying to say. So may God provide that for everyone. And yeah, I'll pause there. Thanks.
That's really interesting that the fastest way that we've seen to grow the local communities is through online. Right. So we have so many people join and grow in local communities because they're here connecting with submitters, pre-existing submitters. Because realistically, how do you grow local communities unless you want a table every day or walk around the streets with signs? It's not easy to grow local communities, right? So we found that a very effective way, if not the most effective way, is online to connect with people and then take it back to the local communities and grow from there.
Yeah,
I just
mashallah,
want
that's great. Yeah, yeah. Please go ahead, Brandy.
I just wanted to say that when it comes to like Rashad's videos and such, that what a blessing that we're able to access those because when a messenger does die, eventually, like within God's system, eventually people start fading out and forgetting. They don't have somebody to refer back to, and then the devil creeps in and snatches up the believers, um and then but now we've got videos that we can refer to whenever we have I mean, he doesn't cover every single topic, but the important ones, like, and how can we deny, I know a video where he's targeting to remember that God is in control of everything, and to not is a way of idol worship, to think that we have control over situations or that other people do, but just to remember that God is always in control, or the jinn companions and stuff like that. Like, we can't just veer off the track and be like, oh well, since he's gone, it's different. Like, now things change. No, the religion is still the same, and thank God we have that to rely on, to go back to, and to keep receiving that guidance.
Yeah, well said. It gives us just a framework, so we're not bickering about the basics. Um, I wanted to make a comment on verse 6. It says, "Recall that Moses said to his people, 'Remember God's blessings upon you. He saved you from Pharaoh's people, who inflicted the worst persecution upon you, slaughtering your sons and sparing your daughters.'" What's funny is I've had, Quran studies or heard criticism from people. They said, "Oh, this is sexist. How's that the worst persecution? Slaughtering your sons and sparing your daughters." And the interesting thing is, it is. It's because imagine what happened to those, poor innocent women when their entire, class of warriors, right, defenders, are gone. They become subjugated by the persecuting the opposing faction, and this is the worst outcome you can imagine. That's the reason it's considered the worst persecution. But it's written in such a way where, again, if someone wants to find faults in the Quran and say, "Oh, the Quran is sexist, it's this, it's that," they'll feel justified. But realistically, they just don't think through to, okay, if God says this is the worst persecution, why is it the worst persecution?
And to be honest, when it comes to somebody feeling offense over, like, oh my God, that is so sexist, like, sparing the women, really, ultimately, at the end of the day, this is God's system. And if we want to stay within his guidance, we have to change ourselves. We have to change our thinking and feeling and our opinions, and our egos. So, even if it didn't pertain to, the protection of women, again, this is God's system and, not ours. It's not built upon how we think and feel about things.
Yeah.
Peace
God out
be
of his
upon you.
mercy too. Oh, good, good. I mean,
Yeah, I finish what you were going to say. I think. Go ahead.
oh, just really quick. Yeah, there's a verse in the Quran. I think it's actually in the same chapter, or sorry, I think it's in chapter 11. It says, God acknowledges that we may be annoyed, right, by what's that. Yeah, we don't grasp it, we don't understand. And then 5101 says, don't ask about matters that, if revealed to you prematurely, would hurt you. God has deliberately overlooked them. If you ask about them in light of the Quran, they will become obvious to you, right? I think I switched the order, but you get the gist. It's like sometimes we just have to be patient. Not everything's going to make sense to us on day one. Good, brother. Sorry about that.
Yeah, peace be upon you guys. I think on what you just said at the end, I think the teachings of the messenger are great blessings. But we know in every community, and I'm talking about mostly local communities, not everybody understands them the same way, and we ought to have tolerance within communities, because people's understanding have changed throughout their lives, and I know that there are certain communities that take this to the extreme, and they turn into a sort of a cult. So they keep asking about different understandings, and they verify whether you're welcome to community. If you agree with them or disagree with them, you're shunned away. So we ought not to fall into this trap. All of us in each community and as well as online, is that if we have different of an understanding, we talk about it, we discuss it, but we understand that people will come to their own conclusion. And yes, ego is involved sometimes, but we're not. Our job is not to kill other people's ego. They when they choose the time is right to kill their ego, accept something, they'll accept it. Meanwhile, focus on what brings us together rather than keep delving onto the differences, because that's division, and division is really never good.
It's a very interesting paradigm, brother. Just presented. I hear this a lot. Let's just not talk about some of the stuff, or let's sweep it under the rug. It's going to divide us. But what I found is the opposite. When we discuss these things and come to resolutions as a family, we actually grow more united.
That's not
Right.
what I said, Navito. I know you said something else. I said something else. So I guess you either misunderstood me, or I didn't say that
Maybe I
don't discuss
misunderstood
it.
you.
I didn't
Maybe
never said don't discuss it. I said do not take to the extreme of shunning people away when they don't arrive at the same understanding. I never said do not discuss it, do not bring it up, or do not talk about the subjects, because these are the subjects that needs to be talked about. But if someone doesn't want to discuss it, or someone is adamant that they have a different understanding, you don't push them to the point of saying, you know what, you either have to agree with us or sort of you're not with us. So this is what I was saying, that this doesn't really help a community. It creates division, because personally I've experienced change of understanding in different topics, and it took me a while for those things to happen. And I can understand some people are resilient to understanding the things that are being presented. And besides discussing it, what else you can do? You can discuss it, you can talk about the points, and at some point we just have to leave to in each individual to actually come to their own conclusion, rather than saying, okay, what's your conclusion? Is it A or B? If it's B, sorry, you're no more welcome here.
Yeah, we look. I would argue, like, for example, in this community, we're very tolerant. We had a guy yesterday who was telling us that the Quran is actually for Moses, and Muhammad's not a person; he's an eternal metaphor. we talked to him for about 15 hours, and we have people like this that we've had on here for years. They believe in Petra or Saudi Arabia's fake, or they believe in multiple Kabbas, this kind of thing. What I've witnessed is most submitter communities won't tolerate these kinds of people. And that's unfortunate, But at the same time, we need to have a balance. We can't say that, someone that doesn't believe in Kaaba is a submitter, right? You know what I mean? So it's like we have clear, this is submission. You are free to discuss with us. We're free to interact or whatever, right? And we have peaceful relations, no disrespect, no insult, but this is kind of the parameters of submission that we have, and God willing, we can work to fall within it. But I think we do a disservice if we identify clear falsehood and then we try to use the umbrella approach and force everyone into submission and say everyone's submitter. It causes more. I know the intention is good, but actually does damage, and it has the opposite effect. That's just from my experience, from what I witnessed. When we try to force this wholesome umbrella approach and try to use that under the guise of unity, it actually causes more disunity. Because at that point everything becomes blurry and broken. We have a platform like this that we came from initially before we got on this Discord, before making this server. And I recently checked back with them, 3.5 years ago, 3 years ago, right? They're stuck at about 100 people on the server and about 5 people that have the views. And they're very tolerant of other people's views, You believe in Petra, whatever. They never tell you you're right and wrong. Everyone's just free to express themselves. But what happens is, because there's nothing for people to latch onto, then there's nothing to build on. There's nothing to grow, right? That's what happens. So we have to be careful to not fall into this trap, to refuse to identify what's wrong or right, and then get in an endless paralysis. That's unfortunately what we witness over and over again. So we have to have the right balance. That's how I understand it. But I'm curious, I'm open to hearing other points of view.
I don't know. Then it becomes a personal. When you say right balance, it becomes your personal understanding of what that balance should be. We don't have a messenger to set the tone. When the messenger of covenant was there, he set the tone of what to tolerate, or people that were Sunnis or Shias that were still allowed to come to the masjid, and he didn't kick them out. They just went on their own. So how do you set the tone now? It will become Naveed's interpretation of what that balance, or in collection with a few others, what that balance is. So again, the danger of that is that you are at some level following your own personal understanding of what that balance should be, and you're putting your soul at danger in that perspective. So it is a risk that you're taking on. It is a risk that you're taking on. Yeah, I'm just saying everybody's entitled to their understanding.
Yeah, but what you're advocating is for subjectivity. So it doesn't have to be one.
No, I'm not advocating for subjectivity. I'm saying when there is a different understanding. I mean, what I mean a difference. Let's take the subjects that have been. Like we have the subject of meat, and we have the other subjects that are a different understanding, right? So we talk about the subject with individuals, and we share the audio, we share the this and that, and they're still adamant that no, this is not a case, or whatever.
But what I've noticed, the people that are adamant on the wrong view refuse to discuss.
That's fine. That's it. You just leave it to it. You can't just keep saying, "Can we discuss? Can we discuss?"
No. But I think you're missing the bigger point. This is God's commandment to consult the believers. So as long as we're being respectful, having a dialogue, it's not. I've seen situations where
so if they want to don't discuss it, you just still want to hold them on and discuss it with them.
No. Look, when you don't discuss and you refuse God's commands, then you lose your voice.
I know, that's fine.
So there can be one person, the majority can be wrong on a topic, right? One person shows up, they discuss, and then they switch to that one person's point of view. The messenger confirms this, right? That's possible. But what you're saying is right? The result of our collective analysis and conclusions, we shouldn't establish that. And I strongly disagree with that position, because you're just neutralizing yourself. You're just paralyzing yourself without realizing it. There's no growth in the position you're presenting, right?
I'm not
And
sure
that's
what you
essentially
mean.
what you're saying is similar to the Quranist position of, well, if they don't want to discuss, we're just not going to discuss it. We're not going to take a position. But if we refuse to take a position on a core issue, then we just get stuck, right? So it's not about my position or Peter's position, other
Stuck in
position.
what?
Yeah. So I mean, this is the deeper issue that I think we need to, if we're curious about it, we could exactly. When you say stuck in what, that emphasizes the whole root of the issue here. I think Said wanted to talk. Go ahead, brother Said.
First, can you let Brother Amin finish? I don't know if he finished.
I'm
His,
okay with it. If he interrupts me, thanks, sister. Though. Thank you. Go ahead.
I think his point was well received, right? The act of pushing someone isn't to his the point that he was making. He made a statement, as I understand it. Correct me, brother, if I'm wrong. Is that you shouldn't push someone to arrive at a compelled conclusion, right? So my understanding is that there's two parts there. There's a pushing element and the concluding element. If you ask someone a question and it's a difficult question, it's rightly so that they should answer the question or have an understanding of what that element or question line that you're pushing. The conclusion is entirely theirs. There is no compulsion on their conclusion. But I think what's lacking here is a fundamental misunderstanding of friction. Friction is ultimately necessary for us to improve and unify our understanding. Each one of us, as you rightly noted, have a subjective or let's say different views on various different topics. But without friction, it is impossible for us to align our understanding. Literally impossible. If I swim along in my understanding and it's entirely different to your domain, and you swim along with your identity, and we hold hands and say, oh yes, we're both submitters, but we fundamentally have different core beliefs, then these are two swim lanes that don't coincide. We must engage. We must have friction, which is undesirable and will lead to egos being killed potentially, which is a good thing. But unless and until we have that friction and communication and direct intimidation of the ideology that we have against one another, we will not be able to come to the right truth. It is not subjective.
And that's exactly, and that's where Brother Amin is going off the rail. Is he's saying it's not worth it to have that friction. But when you don't have pain in this regard, you're not going to have gain, right? So with our pain, look here, we have countless hours of deep discussion, and I would assume he and anyone who agrees with him, they don't like that. It's apparent in their approach, but they also miss out on the growth, development, and deeper understanding of the Quran. We put the effort, right, and we collectively come to a stronger conclusion. Then that conclusion gets established as further understanding God's religion. And that strengthened us. The strength invites to more development, right? But refusing to engage in these arenas, it just makes us in a weakened state, broken. But that's the cost of inactivity. That's the cost of refusing to have some little bit of friction and peaceful dialogue. If someone opts out of a discussion, they lost their voice. No one should be forced to do anything. But if we collectively come up with solutions, that shouldn't be embraced, right? This is the free market of ideas. This is capitalism of religion. It's basically whatever ideas are, is the better, is going to win on top without any force, without any coercion. Because I know of other groups, if you disagree with the top people or the top person, they'll just remove you. They'll just get you out of there. And we're saying, no, we don't want to do that. We want to carefully analyze, address, accept, or refute comprehensively any ideas that are suggested. I believe that's the better approach. And I'm happy that many people here agree with me. That's a better approach than a totalitarian individual who has to do top down and just force his views on everybody. And anyone who disagrees, sorry, you're just going to be removed from the platform. I don't believe in that.
I would like to add that just from experience, and I'm sure a lot or most or all can relate to some degree is I've noticed that when somebody is veering off track, they're veering off that straight path, and they're having too many doubts pile up, and typically it's usually Naveed that's discussing with them where he sees, and even others are seeing where they're just kind of where they're lacking, and they took offense to it, and there may have been some people that sided with this person, and that's where they struggle in their ego, where they struggled to kill it because they found a few that were maybe divided amongst the submitters, and so they took that and they ran with it, and they ran in the very direction where, like with the Quranists and stuff, and they're no longer with us. If I feel like if we God willing, if we band together, if we all, stay strong together in the beliefs that we know are the truth, and not give way. I mean, I'm not saying being mean and talk to him disrespectfully and stuff like that, but to band together and to stay strong within that truth of God, of this religion and the beliefs, then when somebody is struggling with their ego, and nobody is siding with them on that, then they're more amped to be like, okay, so maybe I'm doing something wrong, because they don't have anybody to support their ego and to make them feel comfortable in that ego.
I just want to point out then that we grow together. For example, me, I changed. I just don't like this presentation of saying these topics are just unknowable. I personally changed my view, for example, on circumcision in the last year. Some good arguments were made. I analyzed it further, and I had a different point of view on this. I saw it's not part of the religion. It's not a right of submission. Right? I wouldn't have been able to do this if I didn't have months long of friction with different people and different concepts. So I'm willing to, as we all should be willing to change our views if we're presented with different information, right? So this is very important. This is the growth process. But to say that some topics are just unknowable, so we shouldn't take a position on them, or we can't get enough people to agree or whatever, that's the wrong approach. It's just fundamentally wrong. And again, we think we're doing something for good, but actually we're hurting the movement. And I genuinely believe anybody that spends time with us preaching to the public, talking to Quranists and Sunnis and all these people that come here, the sense of camaraderie, growth, development, and unity only increases. That's what I've witnessed with the brothers and sisters. So, that's something I encourage. That's how I see it. But again, I'm curious and open to hearing other points of view. If somebody thinks they have a better approach, like Brother Amin, if you think you have a better approach and you think it's been successful and it's great, it's good for development, sure, let's hear it. We're not going to censor you.
I wanted to add a little bit as well, mashallah. Some good things were said, and I think it's important to really hear each other clearly so that we don't have misunderstandings, because I think a lot of what we're saying is the same thing, that we can discuss, we can share. At the same time, we don't want to force anything, because that's not, God with all his wisdom, knowing what's best for us, doesn't force us, gives us freedom. And if we try to force, even if it's forcing someone to discuss something that they don't want to discuss, I think that it's first of all, I think it's not good for us, and it's also not good for them. I think it can repel. And so there should be no force in anything. I agree with that. I think that was said, but I wanted to kind of highlight that. And two, after discussion, that we just, again, let people arrive at their own conclusions, give people time and space to have their own journey and to come to things as God guides them. Like, we cannot guide, we cannot convince. God is the one who guides. God is the teacher of the Quran, and so we can share, and that's a beautiful part of being in community, that we can share our understandings, our experiences, what we know. We're not talking about compromising our beliefs and practices. No, we know what's right. We point that out. We may have, there may be subtle things that we may have different understandings of, and that we can discuss, and then letting people arrive at their own conclusions, and not labeling people, oh, because you don't understand this exactly as I do, therefore you're not a submitter. I think that's something that that hurts us and hurts the community and can lead to division. So being very careful about that. Ultimately, it's God who knows. Um, I think
So we've
it's
talked
good
about this with
to
you many
start.
times. So have you changed your view, or are you in the same position? If someone says that in submission there should be 3 prayers a day, do you still consider that person a submitter?
So, brother, what I'm saying is, like, this is what we're discussing is how to go about these discussions. What you
Right,
brought
but
up is that's different
right, but
thing.
I'm
But
just
can
asking a
I finish? Can
straightforward
I?
question.
No, I wasn't finished with my comments.
Well, I'm
Um,
the one that asked you a question.
no, but in the comment that I was making,
Oh,
I was
okay.
not finished with that. But now
Good.
I lost my train of thought.
I just think
Uh,
this is the crux of the issue.
Okay, but okay, let me just give me a moment. Let me just get my train of thought, because I have something else coming up, so I need to leave in a few minutes. But let me just finish my train of thought. That yeah, I think it okay. So it's not that we can't discuss, but I think how we discuss is really important. That it's peaceful and amicable, because I think the growth really comes where people can be, can discuss things in a way that's peaceful and amicable. If there is friction, like as humans, we're wired to move towards pleasure and to resist, like move towards pleasure and move away from pain. And that's why God says, with pain there is gain. Whenever possible, you shall strive. So there, my understanding is that pain is talking about even the striving may not be comfortable, and that's the pain that's being referred to. I think in
Thank you. Thank you. Can you answer my question now with respect, kindly, please?
sure.
If someone insists on they're saying 3 times a day prayer, do we classify this person as submitter?
So I just wanted to finish the comment that was in Surah 94, that with pain there is gain, and whenever possible, you shall strive. That's something that my comment, that is not something that I like. What I'm saying is we need to be careful um, what when we label people, because we don't know where they are on their trajectory, and ultimately, God knows. Uh, we know that the practices are 5 prayers, and that's the correct way. That's the right way. So saying that it's 3 prayers is not right.
That
Um,
wasn't my question, though. My question is if someone is in submission for 10 years, heard everything, they heard the messenger, heard us explain all the verses and everything, and they still says 3 prayers, do you still consider them a submitter? Or I guess, do we as a community consider them a submitter?
Salam alaikum. May I comment on Naveed and Fari? May I comment on that?
please, Brother Douglas, yeah,
Um,
you can comment.
it's not so much whether we consider them a submitter, it's what God says in the Quran. Um, let me give you a sense of what I'm trying to say, God willing. Um, I saw a TikTok a couple of days ago when Naveed was in a debate with 2 or 3 guys that were mocking us as submitters, putting us down. And Naveed confronted them about the Shahada, what the real Shahada was. And what eventually he took them to is he took them to a verse in the Quran, the verse where God bears witness that he alone is God, and so do the angels and those with knowledge. What I want to point out here is that had Naveed said to them, I don't believe your Shahada is correct, or he made a statement that we as submitters, that we don't acknowledge that that Shahada that you guys say with Muhammad, that would be confusing to this extent. The ultimate reference is the Quran. Whether a person is a Semitter or not, that is based upon what God reveals in the Quran. And if somebody is only praying 3 times, at least God knows best, in my opinion, we emphasize and point out to them that this is inconsistent with the Quran. And this is inconsistent with what is defined as a submitter in the Quran or a Muslim. We don't communicate this as if it's our opinion. In other words, it's not my opinion that you are not a submitter because you're only making 3 salats. That's not my opinion. God has clarified this in the Quran. So it's very important when we communicate with others, when people are asking questions, that we always refer back to the Quran. I'll give you another example.
Brother
God
Douglas,
willing.
may I interrupt before you
Right.
sort of continue?
Can we let him
Um,
finish? Can we please let him finish?
no, this is frustrating to me because the answer is a simple yes or no. Everything we say and do is an opinion. Everything. You could be the
It's an
most.
opinion to the extent that where God has clarified in the Quran and what has been revealed to us, yes, I hold my own subjective opinion, but in the absolute sense, it's not an opinion. Yes, it's my opinion, but there's something that eclipses my opinion about it being right. And that is what God has revealed and clarified in the Quran. And what I'm attempting to communicate is that that is the focus when we are discussing with others. We know that we are referring to the Quran. Maybe they know and they're deceiving themselves. But we have to understand, we want to be aware that in the Quran, no messenger or prophet has ever uttered, in my opinion, I think X, Y, or Z, or I think that you're not this, or I think that you're not that. We clearly see in the Quran that the prophets and messengers always referred back to the fact they were messengers and prophets of God. They were bearing witness to the truth, and they spoke always in reference to what God had revealed to them. And something I'd like to suggest, and I see God's guidance and forgiveness, whenever we're incorrect. When people, for example,
You said
ask,
it yourself. You said it yourself, brother. In as many words, you said according to the Quran, you would be classified as not a submitter, right? You said yourself.
Brother
But
Sage,
I haven't
Brother
finished.
Douglas has the
You
floor.
use
No,
the
just
reference.
because you're
Brother,
frustrated doesn't mean that you don't let
you
other
use
people speak.
you
Let's
use the
let Brother
reference.
Douglas finish his comment,
You use
and
the
then you
reference.
can speak.
You
Brother,
use
let
the
Brother
reference.
Douglas
okay,
You use
finish
the
his
reference.
comment.
You use the reference in the Quran that basically you said it very kindly, right? You said to this person, subject A for all intents and purposes, that despite the fact that you've received the message for 10 years and it's been made clear to you by Rashad that the prayer is 5 times a day. Today, you refuse to pray 5 times a day based on your understanding, which isn't limited, by the way. You may be the smartest being on earth. And based on the Quran suggests that this isn't in line with submission. Why waste your breath and words in such an expatiated mannerism? Just
okay,
say, I
may
don't
I,
think you're a submitter. It's that straightforward.
may I respond? May I
Yes, please.
respond?
Yes, please.
In terms of, it's not a question of me wasting my time. What it is by God's leave, I'm simply, not I personally, any of us, I'm simply conveying what God says, say in the Quran. Now, I may be speaking to someone that says, no, you're incorrect. That's not considered what I believe. I'm not worried about what they believe because I can't guide them. I do not have the power to guide them. But by God's leave, what we have the power to do is to communicate to them what we know clearly is in the Quran.
Brother
Now,
Douglas, God bless you. I agree with everything you're saying, but my question with Fari was very simple, very easy.
can I
I
make one
agree.
other point?
Can I
Yeah,
make one other point?
let's let him finish. Let's let him
I want
finish.
to make another observation, and this is not a criticism. God forbid, this is not a criticism. We are a family. Uh, I was watching another TikTok. On the TikTok, Naveed, you do very well. All you guys are doing great. Brandy, all you guys. Now, one of the things I notice in the exchanges sometimes, we know that we've got belligerent people that communicate with us. And they'll say, well, where do you get this from? Or what is this coming from? And on occasion, I've heard replies like, well, we believe that there was a code in the Quran, or we believe that a mathematical code in the Quran was discovered in 1974, or blah, blah. I'm saying we have to be very cautious. We didn't discover the code. It's not a question of simply we believe there is a code. We have to refer back to the messenger of the covenant. We have to always go back to what God has clarified in the Quran, so that the individuals that we are responding to, we cannot control their thoughts. But people are very quick to jump on that's your personal opinion bandwagon, or that's what you want to believe. And when we communicate with people, we must do our best to make sure that we are grounded in the Quran, which we are, and that we communicate, in fact, that to them. You
God
follow
bless you,
what I'm
brother.
trying to say?
I agree with you. I agree with everything you're saying. I'm just addressing a different issue with Fari
Okay.
here.
Yeah,
I agree
okay,
with what
that's
you're
no
saying.
problem. I
God
just
bless
wanted
you.
to
Let him,
give my
yeah, let's let him
input
finish.
regarding that. That's all.
Thank you so much, Brother Douglas. Again, so going back to Sister Fari. So again, if someone refuses 5 prayers, is it wrong to say, to basically identify this person as just not in submission? Is it wrong to have clear parameters under which you are a submitter? And if you refuse to submit, then you're just not a submitter. Doesn't mean I have
Can
to
I
be rude to
comment?
you. Doesn't have to be mean to you. Anything like that.
Can I
Uh,
comment? Quick one.
Yeah,
yeah, I
yes.
guess so. Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
I do need to leave in the next I have another commitment. So I do need to leave in the next few minutes, but if you have I want to
Yeah, I was
listen.
just hoping. I would just.
Yeah.
This question was
Let's other
specifically
brothers.
for Fari, not
But
for other people.
God is running
Yeah,
everything, Brother Naveed. God is running everything. Let's see what God has planned for us to hear, and hopefully, maybe we can all move to a better, understanding and place in our community. Please go ahead, brother. And if it is a long comment, I apologize. I do have something else. I'll need to leave. So let me say peace and may God bless. But I would like to hear your comment if it's a quick comment. Please go ahead.
Yeah, it's a quick comment because I believe easy questions deserve easy and quick answers. So if a person prays 3 times a day after the knowledge has come to him, he's by definition not a submitter, right? I mean, our religion has clear rules and structures. If someone knowingly rejects this, he cannot be a submitter. And if you read in chapter 2, verse 130, you read, "Who would forsake the religion of Abraham except one who fools his own soul? We have chosen him in this world, and in the hereafter he will be with the righteous." So the Salat is part of the religion of Abraham. If someone rejects this knowingly, he cannot be a submitter by definition.
that's
That's very
absolutely correct. And I was hoping Fari would say the same, but he just gives these long, convoluted, irrelevant answers. Are you
So
able to
I would
be?
like to I would like to give a I would like to give an answer before I head out, and that is that, mashallah, Brother Douglas, I think, answered really well, that we know what the Quran says, we know what the right path is. We know that Abraham established this part I'm adding, that he established submission, and that's what we want to follow. In terms of where somebody is, like maybe today, this is where they're at, and with praying 3 times a day and coming to the Quran studies and coming to community gatherings, God will guide them. You know, they're putting in time and effort.
That
Maybe God
wasn't
will
the
guide
question. Is
them,
whether if
and they
that
will
was not
move
the
towards
question. The question was
five
not whether or
prayers.
not they can be guided.
So
Again,
my point,
you're
brother,
really
my
good at answering questions that
brother,
aren't being asked of you.
the
Right?
point that I'm
And like
making,
there's six sister,
I'm trying.
sister, with all due respect, there's 60 people here. I asked very short, concise questions. You go on for several minutes regarding something I haven't asked you. See,
Brother,
I asked a simple
my answer
question.
is, brother, my answer
Are
is
they a
that
submitter, yes or
not
no? It's a yes or no,
brother.
right?
The
It's a
point that
yes or no. It's a yes or no. No, no. There is no brother, sister. It's very simple. It's just a yes or no.
this is, you know,
I
I
also
don't
look.
engage
I
in,
didn't
I
even
don't want
ask
to
Atif
engage
the
in
question. He,
conversations. I don't want to
excuse
engage in
me.
conversations where I'm going to be forced to give one answer or another to answer in a
No, no,
certain
no,
way.
no. It's not about
Okay,
no. Either you
brother.
respect. Listen, sister. Either you respect the demeanor of the discussion and actually address the issues, or you talk about something else,
Salam
right?
alaikum.
No, the answer that
May
I
I
want to
salam
give.
alaikum. Salam alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Uh, God guide us all. We ask God to protect us. This is what I'd like to say. God knows best. It's not a yes or no answer. It's not that simple. It's simple for us. It's simple for us. God says, may I finish? May I finish, please?
Yeah.
God says there is no compulsion and coercion in belief. If I'm talking to someone, I know that if they are praying Salat only 3 times a day, that's not consistent with the Quran. That's not consistent with being a Muslim. But I am not going to take it upon myself to confront them and tell them they're either submit or they're not. What I'm going to do, God willing, is go to the Quran and clarify for them about what it entails, 5 Salat a day. And if they insist upon their way, God knows best. I'm not
Brother, but
going to
this was
confront them.
no. It's
I'm
not
not
about
going to
Let him
confronting. My
finish.
question
Can
was
I
not
ask a
about.
question?
My question
Let
was not
him
about
finish.
confronting anybody.
He has
It
the
was not
floor.
about confronting. I'm
He
not
has the
asking about.
floor. Let's let him finish.
Yeah, I just want to clarify.
what
My
I'm
question is
saying.
not about.
What
It's not about. I'm not asking for anyone to confront anybody. I'm just asking internally if we're having a conversation. We say, look, because of this X, Y, and Z, this person's out of submission. We don't even need to confront them. May God guide them. We shouldn't be mean to them. There's no compulsion. Shouldn't force them to do anything. But if we're just having a conversation, hey guys, is there somebody that worships Jesus? Are they a submitter? No, they're not. Done. That's it. Hey guys,
no, no,
if
no.
someone
What I'm
does,
saying, that's between
no,
us, Naveed. That's
right.
between us as submitters. But I'm saying if I'm talking to
That's all I've been
someone,
asking. But that's all I've been asking, Fari. I'm not even going beyond that. I'm not going into
okay,
confronting them or anything like that.
but can I be convoluted again? Just give me a minute or two, God willing, to be a little more convoluted. Okay? And that is, if I'm talking to someone and I'm exchanging information and they're insisting upon this, I'm not going to tell them you are not a submitter. I'm not going to say, oh no, you're not a submitter. What I'm going to do is remind them of what God says in the Quran. I'm going to let God guide them or not guide them. I'm not going to confront them in that situation. Say, oh no, you're not a submitter. And I'm not saying you're doing this. I'm just trying to clarify that our role is to spread the message, point out these errors, God willing, but we cannot judge or prejudge others or make decisions like that in our exchanges with them. We pray for God's guidance. God have mercy on us. Thank you.
Thank
Can I
you, Brother
interject for a
Douglas. It was
second?
beautifully. I'm sorry, I need to leave, brothers and sisters. So I just want to quickly respond, and then I'm going to head out. Beautiful. Thank you, Brother Douglas. I think that God is clearly giving us a message. I think we should all reflect on this, because I think that even like we know what the right path is, but I think that even
No,
if
we don't.
my
No,
own
not all of us do. Yeah, you
um
Can
shouldn't
I
assume that.
interject?
we
Can I
based on the
interject?
Quran,
No,
brother, can
no.
Sister
I
Mary,
just started
pardon.
speaking, brother.
You
Can you let me finish? Can you give me like 1 minute?
I
Can
asked
you,
to interject, and then
No,
you
1 minute is too long.
yeah,
1 minute is
okay,
way too long.
1 minute is way too long. Okay,
Justin has been
let's
waiting to speak to you and ask you a question. You're really good at not answering questions. And that's the
Yeah,
okay,
problem
I'd
here.
like to
This
say
is
brother,
something
exactly.
also,
no,
honestly.
Yeah, go
brothers
ahead.
and
Go ahead.
sisters, I want to finish because I need to head
Sorry,
out.
sorry. You told me numerous times not to interrupt, and now you're interrupting me. Like
No,
I've waited patiently.
I was the one that was speaking, and multiple people are interrupting me.
You
I
you
started
refuse to
speaking.
answer. You don't answer. If you're going to go on a speech about something else, it's not relevant to the conversation. There's
No,
60
it's
people
about
here. You
this.
don't. Farid,
It's
you do
about
not
this.
respect. You don't respect people's time.
Okay, so can I interject just quickly? And God willing, it'll allude to the truth of the matter. Brothers and sisters, our goal as a community is to strive in the cause of truth. And whenever falsehood is there, we must stamp it out immediately as a community, especially if it grows within our community. Submission is people who say they obey, and they hear and they obey. These are all things that are substantiated by the Quran. If somebody has a difficulty understanding a problem of faith, that is not a question of this conversation. We are very open, we are very clear, we debate, we go and we give the proof, and God willing, they are guided, they choose to be guided, or they choose to go astray. However, if they make a hard standpoint that we as a community are wrong, and their interpretation is correct, it is imperative as a community to point out that they're leaning to their own interpretation, their own subjective truth, which is substantiating falsehood within the religion, and B, they do not follow the religion of truth. This is imperative. Because if they are claiming that they are part of the religion of truth, yet they are following their own interpretation, that's compromise. And we are not to be compromisers. We are not to be conjecture. We are to go on hard truths. This is the religion of truth. And anything else is not part of the religion.
I think Rose has been waiting to speak. Peace be upon her. Thanks. Rose is trying to speak. Go ahead, Rose. Oh, the Fari's not here, unfortunately. But go ahead,
Okay,
Rose.
well, if she's not here, I don't know. I feel like we've had this conversation multiple times, and there's always this fear that we're going to say something to somebody that may hurt their feelings, or God's in control of everything. We should not be afraid to call it as we see it with kindness. It's just that simple. We are here to remind each other. If we are submitters and truly submitting, and we notice that somebody is not, it is our duty to call them out on that so that they can reflect and redirect their course. If we just sit back and be like, well, they're on their own journey, let God figure it out, blah, blah, well, that's our job. Like this whole, like, we're so afraid of offending people. I can't fall into that. That's what half the world is all about right now. And that's why people have their own quote unquote truths and all of these things. And I don't think that as submitters of God or to God, that we should be falling into that category. I feel like we need to like toughen up a little bit.
Salamun alaikum. Sister, would you give me the verse God is say is our job to guide other people? Thank you.
It's remind. It says God says remind, perhaps the reminder will benefit. But
Correct.
Rose,
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that we're
it's not a
supposed to do
duty.
that.
It's not the duty, my dear. It's the duty of messenger of God. Us only we can remind. God bless you.
Jeez, I have a.
Right,
I
that's
just
what I
realized my
said. I said
microphone
that
was.
we need to remind them and let them know what they're doing is not in accordance with submission if they're calling themselves a submitter.
Jeez, can I comment on this topic? Just with regards to like what is our duty as submitters. We have, like, for example, chapter 16, verse 125. It says, "You shall invite to the path of God." God, please forgive me. "You shall invite to the path of God with wisdom and kind enlightenment, and debate with them in the best possible manner." And this invitation, as far as I understand it, is not limited to non-submitters. It's even submitters, because the verse continues and says, "God knows best who has strayed from His path and who is the guided one." Right. So if we think a submitter is doing something wrong and we think they might be straying, our job is to invite them back to the path of God. Right. The submitter says, "Hey, you know what? I think it might be 3 prayers." We're supposed to invite them back to the path of God. They're starting to stray. We invite them back to it. We got chapter 103, verse 3, where it says, "By the afternoon, the human being is utterly lost." And then I believe in the 3rd verse it says something to the effect of, "Except those who uphold the truth." Right. So in general, there's if we really want to sit down and go through it, I think there's more than enough substantiation to show our job is to advocate righteousness, uphold the truth, promote the truth, support God, support the truth, invite each other. And if we think people are going astray, otherwise, what's the point of having a community as I see it, right? It's the reason why God wants us to be together. But just to Brother Douglas, peace be upon you, Brother Douglas. To be honest, I'm also against public takfiring. I don't see it personally necessary to tell somebody you're not a submitter or this takes you out of the fold. You know what I mean? Like, I don't feel the need for that. I feel like when you state the truth in the Quran clearly, like, hey, the Quran tells you have to pray 5 times a day, and if you want to pray more or less than that, this is not acceptable. You know, this is according to the Quran, not the definition of the submitter. If that person insists on their ways, I mean, I don't have to call them anything. as far as I see it, their actions and behavior tell the world what they are. What's important is among submitters is we advocate for the truth, we establish the truth, we invite everybody, and I don't see anything wrong with saying, hey, listen, according to the Quran, this is the standard of what a submitter is required to do. You know what I mean? I remember Dr. Rashad gave a khutbah, one of his most important khutbahs. He says, he gives one of the standards. He says, if you object to anything, you are not a submitter. Because a standard, a requirement of being a submitter is not to object. So we set the standard. We say this is what a submitter is. Anything outside of that is not a submitter. And then the people with their own actions and words and behaviors will show to the world, to themselves, to God, where they are on that spectrum. What do you think about that, Brother Douglas?
Alhamdulillah, I agree. By the grace of God, not because of I, but because this is what God says. I agree with it. It's consistent with what God says in the Quran. It's not a matter, as we know, I'm talking in general, it's not a matter of my personal opinion, even though it's correct. Even though my opinion is consistent with the Quran, it's not about my personal opinion. It's about what God has revealed. I can convey it in the sense that in other words, this is what God has revealed. If a person rejects it, that's on them. If they want to mock me and claim that it's my personal opinion, again, that's their incorrect perception of what I'm saying. But what God willing, I want to make sure is what you said a moment ago. This is consistent with Quran. It's consistent with God's guidance.
I have a follow-up. Sorry, Brother Navid, if you just mind. I just had one quick follow-up question. Because I just want to see about this. So, is it incorrect to say, for example, listen, a certain belief, a certain ideology, a certain behavior, a certain practice, according to the Quran, is idolatrous or blasphemous or hypocritical? Because the way I see it is, we address the issues, the beliefs, the behaviors, the understandings. I personally see nothing wrong with saying this is either idolatrous or disbelief or hypocritical. And it's not that I'm necessarily calling that person a hypocrite or a disbeliever and a worshiper. I'm addressing the belief and pointing out the faults in the belief. And if that person chooses to persist in that, then that's up to them. It goes back to what we were saying just now. It just goes to show where they are on the spectrum. I don't even need to say it. Does that sound about right, Brother Douglas?
Alhamdulillah, by the grace of God, I agree with that. I agree with it, not personally, right? It's not about a personal opinion. It's about the truth. If I'm talking to a person who is a non-Muslim and they are seeking the truth, and they tell me, I fast during Ramadan, but I only fast 15 days. Well, I'm not going to retort, well, you're not really a submitter. You're not truly submit. You're not really a submitter. I'm simply going to, God willing, respond. Ramadan is for 30 days. I will explain to them according to the Quran what the fasting is in Ramadan. But God forbid, I'm never going to convey it to them like, well, you're not a submitter, or you're not a believer, or you're doing wrong. This is wrong. Even though it is, I'm going to convey it to them clear cut. Whatever it is, it's idolatry, it's blasphemy, it's deviation. But God willing, I'm going to do it with what? The Quran. I'm going to do it with the Quran. Allah knows best. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on what Rose said. It's actually more unfortunate than that, Rose. I wish it was just limited to kindness and compassion, and the reason is because of kindness, compassion. That's not the case, right? If the truth is established and we want to support the truth, and it's just, okay, well, look, we just need to be more kind in delivering it, that wouldn't be bad. The problem is the truth is also being compromised. It's not just this concept of compassion. At least that's not my observation of what Far is saying. Their side is that, no, we don't even have the right, or we shouldn't even judge that someone isn't a submitter. This isn't even about confrontation or going to them, informing them, or anything like that, right? It should be very easy. I gave the example. Hey, if someone says Jesus is God, are they a submitter? Oh no, they're not. Well, what about someone rejects the ultimate miracle? Are they a submitter? No, they're not. Can they be guided? Yeah, let's pray for their guidance. Let's be nice to them. Let's pray for their guidance. That's all wonderful stuff. So they're getting diverted, right? Anyone who's arguing this position is just getting diverted under the guise of compassion and stuff. They refuse to just stand for the truth, right? I agree. It's not always appropriate to just dismiss somebody and like publicly saying, you're a disbeliever or whatever. Fine. Yeah. But if within ourselves, right? If we know someone's been here for 10 years and they've openly, I'm not talking about the Quranists that just shows up and they're confused on topics. God willing, we're patient with those people. You know what I mean? They just came around. They're hearing stuff for the first time. They don't know. They're investigating. Whatever. That's fine. I say don't really, condemn those people. But if someone's been here for 10 years and they say, yeah, I don't agree with the messenger's prayer, yeah, you're out of submission. We not being able to say that hinders us, right? And Far is adamant about not saying that such a person is out of submission. That damages us. It's counterintuitive, but it actually hurts the movement.
Why
Can I ask you a question?
we have to say he's out of submission?
Yeah.
Because if you don't clearly define to some extent what submission is, then it's meaningless. If you stand for everything, that means you stand for nothing. Then that's just Quranism.
Okay.
I mean, can I ask him a question, brother Nabi? Right? Like, I have a question for you. I mean, if we say if we stick it to the ideology and say, listen, this ideology takes you out of submission. I mean, we've made a stance. We
Yeah, that's
stand
fine
for
with me. Yeah, that's fine with me. Yeah, I mean, I made clear that it wasn't, maybe you weren't here. I made clear it's not even about confronting the individual. It's about the stance that we're taking. Right? Do we recognize that certain positions and ideologies push us out of submission? Brother, I mean, maybe he can speak on this. Maybe he doesn't agree.
No, I think,
sisters.
brother,
Yeah,
I don't.
I'm not worded
you
as
do
such.
agree with that, right, brother?
I think I'm gonna I think that this word taken out of submission, or you're out of God's grace. Perhaps maybe this is implied. This is in contradiction with Quran in some point, and I think that using the right words is probably better. So again, you can say, I think you're going in the wrong path, or I think you're misunderstanding this concept, or I think this is wrong in my understanding. You're in the wrong direction. Please reflect based on these facts.
Yeah, but
I think this is more
again, brother, you fell into the trap again. No, brother, you fell into the trap again. You're talking about how to speak to the person. I'm not addressing that. You're talking to me.
I'm talking to
You're talking to me.
Why would
We're saying
I
this is
even telling you, Danya? Even telling you, Navi, your stance on this subject, whether it be political or otherwise, this contradicts Quran. Do you want me to tell you it takes you out of submission? What do you want me to tell you?
if you have a strong argument for it, sure, I'd love to hear it.
Like, brother,
if that's what you truly believe. But look, I'm saying this is the religion of Abraham. In the religion of Abraham, we don't pray to Jerusalem. So if someone's praying to Jerusalem, they're in a different religion. We should be willing to say this.
Okay.
What do you think, brother? I mean, do you think if someone's praying to Petra, are they following the rights of Abraham?
No, I don't think so. I don't believe they are following the rights.
Yeah, so they're not in the religion of Abraham, correct?
They are confused. I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
The person a little bit more to tell what's the story, but
brother, it doesn't matter. Hey, you know what? Guess what? I'm being a fortune teller. I'm telling you, in 6 months, they're going to be guided and they're going to become better submitters than you and I. How about that? But right now, they're outside of submission. Right? We should be able to say that amongst ourselves. And when I mean that, we should be able to believe that. That if someone believes Jesus is God, yeah, they're outside of. And Sister Susan asked a great question. She says, well, look, if someone prays to Petra or whatever, do we have them leading sermons? No. How can you have someone leading sermon if they're praying in a different direction? They're not following the religion of Abraham. We shouldn't be struggling with this basic concept.
brother.
Our struggling with this is our crippling. It's causing our crippling. It's all causing us to become crippled.
Brother, if I may add on to what you're saying, I agree with you, right? Like, certain things take you out of the fold of submission, and it's not my opinion. It's according to the Quran, right? Like, for example, not accepting messengers' judgments, innovating something. God says, "Who's more evil than one who like innovates something?" You know what I mean? Creating dietary prohibitions. The Quran's pretty clear. There are certain actions, behaviors that take you out of the fold of submission. Like that's just what it is. I'm sure if we go through all the verses, we can all agree this does, according to the Quran, take them out of the fold of submission, right? And it's not my opinion. It's what the Quran says, right? But rather than in our minds thinking to ourselves and confirming, okay, this person is out of the fold of submission, just to focus on again on the idea, just that again, this understanding is incorrect. This understanding is wrong, and just kind of focus on that. If that makes any sense.
I just want to go check with brother. I mean, if he found anything objectionable to us, because it sounds like he's saying, "Well, I'm going to find some political stance you have, and then I'm going to use that to say, for example, you're out of submission." Is that what you believe? I mean, or what? Did we say anything objectionable here?
Oh, what are we talking about? What are we talking about right now?
Yeah, is it wrong to identify the parameters of submission? That's really the crux of the issue right now.
Okay, so those are some of the more clear-cut items that you give an example, right? But and then you get to a little bit more, more subtle things. So that's what I meant by when you say you have to define the parameter of submission. It's very hard to do that because you're buying the onus on yourself of
I'm not though.
Parameters are. You want to do it yourself, or you want to do it with collective of the submitters. I just don't feel comfortable going that path because there's no ending to what else we should consider. Okay, so we established 3 pairs is out of submission. Everybody consensus. We established someone who idolizes Jesus is out of submission. We established dietary prohibition, innovation out of submission.
I think we don't even need to talk about specific topics. It's very simple formula.
Yeah,
very simple formula. Very simple formula. I believe it's in 465 and 2451. Both verses saying, if you refuse to refer to the messenger to settle the disputes, then you're out of submission. It says you're not believers.
Yeah,
right?
but
so
when they say, then it comes. I mean, I'm not trying to play devil's advocate, but say we hear the messages, but we understand there's this and there's also this and this. You know what I mean? Because then it
but I mean,
yeah.
I don't know why we run in circles. We have a verse talking about this.
Yeah. I'm not saying. I'm just saying that.
Look, honestly, I mean, look, the example you're giving is very rare. It's very rare to find a topic that 2 submitters are listening to messenger and they genuinely both want to obey whatever he says, and then they reach fundamental different conclusions. I'm not saying it can never happen, but it's very rare.
I don't know what I don't know what to think about that kind of understanding, and I really personally I don't understand it, but I really don't want to get into the minds of people and trying to think what kind of thinking they have, but at the end of the day,
I'm just telling you, it's very rare. Look, God gave us a system. We either agree to utilize the system or we don't. That's the bottom line. God says, consult the believers, refer to the messenger you have a dispute. That's it. If we all are willing to uphold these 2 commands, I think 99% of our problems are solved.
Yeah, but they wiggle around that.
Okay, bring them here. Okay, let's have a conversation. Bring them here.
I'm just saying there's room for them to wiggle out of that.
Are they here? Are they willing to talk to us? No, but if they're not willing to have a conversation, then they're not following the Quran, are they? We're willing to talk to anyone submission, no preconditions. Anyone, no conditions, no this, no that. Oh, you have to change your view. We'll talk to anybody.
John, slow down.
Okay? I can see that.
The subject I'm talking about drawing this clear line of saying refer to the messenger when there's dispute, right? I mean, this is what you're drawing a line. for someone else may not be, right? They say,
But
oh,
that's
this
what the Quran says, brother. Do they have another verse? This is
yeah,
what the Quran says.
read the verse. Let's read the verse.
Yeah. Can somebody put both verses in the chat?
Which one?
465 and 465 and 2451. Take up your saying rejected. Hold on. 24.
I think it's 2048.
I think I missed it. Yeah, it's not 2451. It's right next to it, I think. 24.
It starts from 47. It starts from 47 all the way to 51. Yeah.
Yeah. It's 2447. That's right. So 465 is very clear. I see what you got to say and reject it. It says, never indeed by your Lord, they are not believers unless they come to you to judge in their disputes, then find no hesitation in their hearts whatsoever in accepting your judgment. They must submit a total submission. So if they refuse to refer to the messenger to settle disputes, they're just not believers. They fall out. That's what the Quran says, not me. That's number one. And number two, 2447, it says, God sends instructions through his messenger. Subtitle, verse says, they say we believe in God and the messenger and we obey, but then some of them slide back afterwards. These are not believers. So there you go. So I guess I can add 2451 too. Believers unhesitatingly obey God and his messenger. The only utterance of the believers, whenever invited to God and his messenger to judge in their affairs, is to say, we hear and obey. These are believers. If we agree on the concept in these three verses, then we're on the same paradigm. Okay? So if we believe, God says consult the believers, and we believe that if you refuse to refer to the messenger, then you fall out of submission. That's clearly in the verse. It says you're not believers, and God swears by it. Right? God swears by, what is it in 465? It says, never indeed by your Lord, they are not believers unless. So it's using very strong language. God's swearing they're not believers. If they refuse to use this,
during the life of the messenger, they're referring to God and messenger about their disputes.
You're saying you're saying the verses are only relevant to the time of the prophet's life?
And the messenger's life, yes. That's not.
So why did the messenger use this verse in end of Appendix 2? You're saying he published his book in July 1989 and he left, he was blessed with martyrdom, January 1990. You're saying he used this verse only for those 6-month period?
They say this is a dispute. So there's an argument being presented, and that there's an argument, and actually the messenger hears them and hears the argument and responds to them and clarifies the dispute. We don't have a live messenger.
But we don't have it. If you say 3 prayers, I say 5, we turn on the video, Rashad says it's 5 prayers, he's already addressed it.
Nobody asked to provide that clarify. We can't refer to the messenger to answer our question. We can only see
though.
And take what we
Brother
hear.
Elham, if you want to continue, I think you understand the point I'm trying to make. Please go ahead. If you could please continue with this line of reasoning.
Yeah. Brother Amin, let's just take a quick look at Appendix 2 and like Rashad's explanation of these verses, right? So it's one, he says mercy from God. He says chapter 21, 107. This is when the believers are faced with a problem, they develop a number of possible solutions, and this invariably leads to bickering, disunity, and disarray. We learn from 2:151, 3:164, 21:107 that it is but a mercy from God that he sends to us messengers to provide the final solution to our problems. And the biggest thing here is we have to understand this is God's system. And it says, we learn from chapter 42:51, which is the 3 methods of communication, where it says, no human being can communicate with God except through 1, inspiration, 2, behind a barrier, or 3, through a messenger, through whom he reveals what he wills, right? So we learn from 42:51 that God sends his messengers to communicate with us, to disseminate new information. Hence the strong injunction in 465, and he's referring to the settling of the disputes. And 80, to accept without the slightest hesitation the teachings delivered to us through God's messengers. Now, when the messenger comes, disseminates these teachings, this new information that he was commissioned to deliver from God, that information doesn't die with him. We can't say, oh, well, now that he's dead, we can't judge in these affairs, and this information that he brought was just for during his time, because unfortunately, that's the consequence of that line of reasoning, is that, hey, then all the information he brought through the God system 42:51. Then he's not alive, so he can't settle between us about age of 40. He can't settle between us about the jinn companion. He can't settle to us about the great feud, and then we're back to square one of being lost. You know what I mean? So I don't believe it's limited to that. I mean, for personal disputes, yeah, sure. Like, you know, me and you were arguing over something personal or whatever, and he said, yeah, he's not here to do that. But as far as matters relating God, so relating God, this is part of the information that he brought. This is the new information, you know, that God wanted to disseminate to us through the messenger. And I believe that transcends mortality. Well, the Quran also says that it transcends mortality.
I agree with you on principle on this. This is not a point of dispute, but from my perspective, I'm saying what I've seen the people argue is that, you know, we can he cannot settle dispute for us because although they listen to the audio and say, oh, but in the Quran he clarified this or he updated it by saying this here and there. But anyways, I don't know that so the argument is not settled because they listen to the audio. Maybe because they don't they want to adhere to their understanding nonetheless. But I'm just saying it really doesn't. For me, I wouldn't go as far as saying, oh, if someone doesn't agree, or listens to it as not fully understanding, or doesn't absorb this, is out of submission. I mean, that's
But that's what the verse is saying. God is swearing by it.
1 second, Brother Naveed. Brother Amin, I hear what you're saying, and to a certain degree, I agree with you. My only problem is the people who usually argued against, for example, oh, well, the messenger is not alive to judge and our stuff. They disagree with even what he left in his authorized English version Quran. Something that they disagree with topics, and they say the messenger was wrong, and well, he's not here to settle the dispute on, for example, jinn companion, when he's been very clear throughout his messengership, throughout audios, throughout videos, submitters' perspectives, to appendices, footnotes, you know, like they take it to that degree. And then when we cite 465, 24, 51, and all these verses that say, hey, listen, the messenger judged on this topic, you know, and we just have to accept this judgment. They say, well, he's not alive. How do you know? Maybe I could have given him some points and maybe he would have reconsidered. You can't be certain he didn't consider these points. Maybe he never heard these points that I'm going to bring. And it turns into stuff like this, where even the most like widely taught things, consistently taught things by him, are being rejected under this concept of under this misunderstanding that the judgment only refers to when he's alive. You see the problem with that, brother?
I mean, I understand it. It's just I don't have a real argument of going to that extent. I'm just saying that I think there's a lot of things in the Quran that people can misunderstand based on their background, and even though the messenger clarifies some of the things, they take the interpretation that they say, oh, this is not only it, it's beyond that. And so I don't know. I think the best for us is to leave in some of these subtle matters to God, and not trying to define everyone and trying to draw a line and trying to.
No, because if you do this, then it's just subjectivity. Then you end up with nothing. You have no religion at that point. We've seen it every day, brother. You need to spend more time over here with the Quranist. Then you understand what we're saying. This religious transgenderism goes nowhere. If you want to have a dead-end religion without any growth or progress or development, yeah, continue to advocate for subjectivity in religion. But if you want to have growth, establish God's religion on earth and develop, you need clear boundaries. You need them. Otherwise, you have no religion. We're not doing anyone any favors. Please, like, I get the good intentions, but it does not help. Trust me. I'm just telling you from my experience and understanding. It just doesn't work.
What kind of result have they had? I'm talking about online.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's online, offline is irrelevant. When you have a clear path, it's something for people to join. When you make this,
Let me finish what I was trying to say. I'm not talking about. I'm saying in person. I'm talking about real communities, because there's no matter of how much online activity these people actually need to be active within their own.
Brother.
So let me finish, Navi. Let me finish. So, how you manage differences in each community beside the nice words that you say here has to be dealt with. And what do you do?
I can give an example. My community, brother Amin, like in the Toronto community right now, there's an issue of messenger, role of the messenger, what do we accept, et cetera, to the point where they're saying, you know what, Rashad translated certain things wrong. His translation is not 100% correct, and there's issues, and a lot of doubts get kind of thrown into there. You know what I mean? And now the issue is this concept of we have to obey or accept information the messenger delivers is being said that it's conditional. You know what I mean? This is a big issue in our community right now, and unfortunately, the community's kind of stood on it. So what we're doing is we're having discussions on this, and saying, "Come, let's examine it in light of the Quran," and hoping that the people who differ on the topics actually show up and have the discussion. But unfortunately, you know, what ends up happening is people who differ on the topic, they don't wish to come and discuss. You know, or they don't make it a priority or an effort to discuss. They're just happy with the understanding that they have, which is, you know.
Not yet. Look,
Navi,
it's very simple, brother. It doesn't matter if it's online or in person. It's irrelevant.
Navid, what's your solution for the Toronto community?
Yeah, I've told Elham my solution for the Toronto community. Continue having meetings, more discussion, and eventually these ideas that fall. Huh?
Well, if they don't show up, what do? You when they come in fight Parisari, you're out of submission. Please don't come in.
I'm coming. Yeah, it's very simple.
No. We don't advocate. I just want to just that Navid has never, and nor have I ever advocated for like
once someone's in a submission or out of submission, if you're effectively not doing anything physically, right?
Yeah, no. Well, so let me clarify what I'm trying to say here, right? We have to. Yeah, sorry. Can you hear me? Am I cutting out?
No, go ahead.
Am I cutting? Yeah. So we have to establish what is the truth. At that point, people have the option to either accept it or reject it. But we do have to define. Listen, this is submission. This is the expectation from God. This is what the Quran requires of the believers. If we can't agree on that, then we have no foundation, really. You know.
This is exactly what I mean.
Wait.
I mean, ask me because I've been trying to speak for several minutes.
Navi, go ahead. Fine. Tell me.
Look, it's very simple. I told you, it doesn't matter if it's in person or online. Somebody's echoing. Who is this? I said it doesn't matter if it's in person or online. The concept's the same. And these are what's interesting. We have Brother Saeed and others that we're sending to the London community. The people from Discord are now bigger, if equal, if not bigger, or will be in the near future, than the London community's grown in 15 years. Think about that. We achieved more in 6 months than they did in 15 years. And I'm a guy in Utah, and someone else is in India, someone else is in Dubai. How is it we are able to grow the physical community of another country? Right? And the same thing with Toronto. How many people did we send to Toronto community? That's why Far's comment was wrong. We're actually helping grow the in-person communities through Discord.
No.
By God's leave, it's a big blessing. And it's very simple. This is the clear. Listen. If we go by your approach, then we have no religion. Then there's nothing for people to join or latch onto. It just doesn't work. It sounds good in theory, what you're saying, but in practice, it's a disaster. It doesn't work. Yeah, go ahead.
Then, right now, what's happening, what you practically, so if they don't want to participate in discussions, what do you do then?
It doesn't matter if they want to participate or not participate. This is what Sister Susan was asking. If someone prays in a different direction, then they're out of submission. Whether they want to talk about it or not talk about it. If they talk about it, great. But if they don't want to talk about it, then that's the end of that. Right? So you make these clear lines. In submission as a community, we consult with each other and we have a clear recourse of referring to the messenger to settle our disputes. If someone refuses this, then they're out of submission. Simple. It doesn't even matter what the topic is.
Okay, so if they're out of submission, what's the next step?
Nothing. They get observer status at like some people have observer status at the United Nations. They don't participate. They just kind of watch. Anyone's welcome to watch, just like on here. Everyone's welcome to come watch us, but if people opt out of the conversations, then they've opted themselves out. Then they've lost their voice.
Okay, so if the guy who's you disagree with and doesn't want to take in discussion is the one who's actually have the masjid and runs the masjid, can you take him out like that? You have to leave the masjid, right?
Yeah, I
So
mean,
it depends on the
essentially,
situation.
yeah. If there's one guy who wants to pray north and it's his building and we all want to pray the
It's not
right
about
way,
playing north. It's about the subject. For example, the subject that our brother brought up. If he's one of the two people that is contributing to the
yeah.
masjid.
For example, Jinn Companion. Yeah, if it's his house and he refuses to accept the teaching of the messenger on Jinn Companion, then he's out.
No,
So
it's
if we
not
have
his
to
house.
leave,
It's a masjid. Yeah, it's house. He's out. Then do you leave that masjid now?
if are you saying if I'm forced to leave, then I'm forced to leave. What am I
No,
supposed
you're
to
not
do?
forced to leave. And you're not
Yeah,
forced
I don't believe such a person is qualified to give sermons. That's what my response to Sister
Okay, so
Susan's
now if he
question in
doesn't
the comments.
drop down, then he needs to bring him down, like literally, I don't know how, but or
It's
just
very
leave, right?
simple. Either you can use social pressure, you
But
can
what?
interact, or if he's saying I'm not gonna let you guys operate on my master the way you guys want to, you have to operate the way I am to. Okay, then God's are the spacious. We just leave. Like we don't have a choice because at that point it's not division because they weren't even in submission anyway.
I have a question about
No, but
something
you're
else.
asking him to step down because his opinion is not valid. You don't
Yeah,
want him.
if he's not within submission, then he's not within submission. That's why I don't understand why you're making a
Okay,
distinction between
so
prayer direction or
all right,
adhering to the messenger's teachings. If someone doesn't
no.
want to adhere to the messenger's teachings, then they're not in submission. That's why we're going to send 10 more people, right? God willing, that
Can
all
I,
accept the messenger's teachings. That's just what it is.
yeah, can I just clarify something? It's not about not accepting the messenger's teachings. It's the person is essentially fundamentally saying that it's a rejection of God's system. You know, and if this person is preaching that we reject God's system, whether that's their intention or not, I mean, 4063 talks about this. You know, it says like when the retribution hits them, they'll swear by God our intentions were good and righteous. And I believe that. I believe these people they genuinely, from the bottom of their heart, think they're doing something righteous, but it's not. It's not righteous. You know, it's the rejection of God's system. You know, we can't have a masjid where the rejection of God's system is being promoted and upheld. 4251, we accept any information from God. When God sends us information, we have to accept it. And rejection of God's system is this is not submission.
If you, brother, you know this, you read the Quran for
Yeah,
years. If your foundation is broken, you can't grow. The only way we can grow and develop is having a proper foundation. A foundation has to be built on righteousness. If you have these broken foundations, that's for me, that's a big reason why a lot of these communities don't grow or they're broken or they become cults or isolated dictatorships or whatever, right? That's just what it is. If there's some community somewhere in this country that's been 4 people and it's stuck and they can't grow in any way, maybe they should reevaluate their approach.
yeah, but we have the approach that you're proposing has been also practiced in the past in different
Yeah, and
communities,
look,
and
you're
they
the
broke.
world's largest Quran
Well,
study in 2
you didn't.
years.
You just
Explain that to me.
you stopped me from completing
Go
my
ahead, go
sentence,
ahead.
and the result was that they ended up in division and they split into 3 groups because they didn't agree on a certain Quranic understanding. Let's say adultery and then other topics, and then they split in 2 communities and they split in more communities because they didn't agree on another topic. And meat was one of them, and they were all adamant that this is the understanding at that point. They discussed it extensively. Probably we weren't
Yeah.
there, but and then they
Whether
all decided the wrong decision and they kicked people that they shouldn't have kicked out. So you're saying now, because now we have, you're basically saying the same thing, to continue the same pattern, which this all
No,
ended up
no,
in a
that's not
community of
true. That's not
split into
true.
4.
Can I clarify? Can I please clarify? Navid, 1 second. Brother, there's a fundamental difference. Like even here, like on this Discord thing, like we disagree on some topics, right? But we're not talking about a specific topic. We're talking about fundamentally like fundamental systems, God's system, and it's not my opinion. It's what the Quran said. If we can't agree with the Quran when it says that we have to accept the information that God delivers through His messengers, then this goes beyond that. This can extend to any topic. It's a rejection of God's system. You know what I mean? It's not even about topics at that point.
Why is it? I mean, why is it we don't have force here? We don't ban people for beliefs. Michael Jackson, who I consider to be way out of submission, he's still allowed on the server. He's not censored in any way. But the rest of us that are genuinely interested, why is it we grow more united and we grow more in numbers and we're going more in our deeper in our understanding of the Quran? Why is God rewarding us for this?
Okay, I like to see that physical example in your own community in Utah. Then we can talk about it. Right. I'm not talking. Online is a completely different animal.
Yeah, and I'm giving you the example of London. I'm giving you the example of Dubai. I'm giving you the example of New York. Actually, New York City is a perfect example. It's
No,
one
but
of the
you
big
live in
communities.
Utah, right?
Yeah, and how am I able to coordinate with people in New York City and their
Yeah, so if
masjid?
you're successful in your in Discord, then you should also be successful in Utah, in your local city, bringing all the people in your
Yeah, sure. If anyone's willing to come here, sure. I mean, God willing, we're gonna have more people
bringing
move
new
to Utah.
submitters from different backgrounds to that. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, and
easier said than
I'm
done when you
already
actually have to
yeah.
do it in a local place.
I just want to say that it would be kind of hard to maybe establish a actual community in Utah if you are living on Discord, establishing a community. He can't be in two places at once.
Okay, so that's why I'm saying the problems of the real communities are a little bit different than the online ones.
So I have a question. So you don't consider New York a real community?
No, I do. No,
Okay, so is Toronto a community? Is London a community? Is Dubai a community? So
No,
why are
I
you
do.
refusing to acknowledge these places as communities?
No, I'm not refusing to acknowledge. I'm saying
Okay, so then what's the issue?
the solution that you just gave to Toronto community, or example of it, have been sort of experienced in the past, and it sort of failed because they divided on a different understanding and they split in different groups. I haven't seen a really. I mean, when we have a messenger, it's really easy to think it's one direction, but when all people's understandings come in between, then it becomes people's opinion and understanding of.
You say that, but at the time of the messenger, the same people will be fighting the messenger. There's no difference.
Yeah, I understand that.
If you're a hypocrite today, you're going to be a hypocrite at the time of messenger.
At that time, we knew what was the truth, what was not.
Yeah, but brother, you're not. I don't think you recognize what's happening here. Look. By God's leave, it's been over 2 years, and we have the world's largest Quran study. It's not a coincidence. People are able to come to the religion here. We have conversions every week because we actually have something. You're saying don't take positions on XYZ topics.
Right? No, that's not what I said. I said,
okay, so should we? So what should we do?
Push it. I said how far.
I'm willing to push it as far as the messenger and the Quran outline for me. How about that?
Okay, I like to see that in practice. How would that work?
Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. I think we have discussed this at length. Can we discuss other topics or issues if anybody has any questions? God bless.
Yeah, I mean, the Quran study is over. This is an important topic. I don't think this is an issue that ends in one session or whatever. And I mean, I genuinely invite you to come on Discord more during the week. We talk about this topic for hours. I'd love to have your input.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, brother. Just before everybody starts to leave because the Quran study is over, can I make my announcement real quick?
Yeah, go ahead. But yeah, okay, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted everybody, all the sisters, to know that I did set up a movie night for us next Friday night, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, for us to view a movie together. And anybody that's interested, please just go to your calendar and click on it. The more interest that I have, the more that will obviously prompt me that we as a female community want to do more things together and I can plan more events. Thank you. That's all I had. Thanks, brother.
Yeah, and I put it in the chat, by the way, sister.
Yeah, I'm just curious, Rose, have you met Brother Amin K?
I think briefly a couple times. I don't think I've had a lengthy conversation with him before.
Yeah, this is what I mean. I mean, like, Rose is here every day. You should join our discussions, right? We have great discussions every day. Sister Rose has wonderful contributions. Other brothers and sisters that are new, I think there's a large number of them you haven't even met. So you should join. I mean, this is the Quran study, or we had our Quran study, which is great. But these kind of discussions, we have a daily discussions, and these are really important topics. I believe, unless you and your community or anybody who believes the other way corrects these understandings, their submission is not going to grow in their groups. I fundamentally believe this strongly, strongly.
And
Right?
don't forget, Navi, you talked about the Salat, right? This is a fundamental aspect of the religion.
Yeah, we have a guy here, and he's
Can't
telling
reject
us
this.
for the last 2 weeks he's been arguing, confusing members, saying we have to pray north. Right? We're trying to confuse our new members, but praise God, God is sending us strong submitters. But I think this concept of identifying the religion is very, very important. Maybe some people don't consider it very important. I consider it extremely important. Because unless we can identify what our religion is, then there's nothing else to do. At least on a collective basis. Yeah, maybe individually you can do whatever you want. But on a collective basis, the only way forward is to identify a religion. Anyone denying this is just confused. That's my understanding. So, this is an important topic. Honestly, brother, I encourage you to come other days of the week and then we just have a conversation at length. You think I'm wrong on something? Sure, I hear you out. But but I would just address this quickly that what you're saying regarding these other communities, as far as I can tell, they've all just been a bunch of cults. They refuse to have productive dialogue. They have this kind of non-communication system where it's over, giving speeches to each other. They don't really address each other's points. There's no clear paradigm. It's just not coherent, and that's why it's broken results. But praise God, I think we've done a much better job here. That's how I see it. So, anyone
Brother,
willing to discuss or here to discuss? Go ahead.
I can understand where you're coming from. We're like, oh, how is it going in your local community? The thing is most of us don't have a local community. I live in a town of 3,000 people in the middle of Oregon. I don't have a community. And even when I did notice when I was a Sunni and we had communities, everybody would meet for prayer and then everybody just goes off their own way. There's no real discussion. This is a perfect platform for not only people that don't have communities to go to, but even if they do have communities to go to, they're not going to spend hours on end sitting and discussing these and coming to an understanding. This is a place where you can listen in and chant in and talk to other people when you're doing your normal everyday activities, right? Like I'm at work, but I have Discord on the computer, and when I have a break, I can chime in and I can listen to something. If this was like a normal community, I would maybe see everybody on Fridays, right? So there's a huge benefit to being able to have a Discord like this where we can all come and talk. So there's benefits for the community that you can go pray with on Fridays, but there's also benefits to having this great international community where you not only get to learn from people in your area, but you get to learn from people all around the world and get opinions from a lot of different people's perspectives. So I don't think that it's right to just kind of minimalize this community in the way that you are. That's just my opinion. Thank you, brother.
And I'm just curious, to Brother Amin and anyone else who might agree with him, what alternative is there to unite submitters all over the world and genuinely get to know people and the communities and establish unified doctrines? I don't see any other way, at least right now, as far as I understand, than Discord. In terms of this effective, now I can go to France, I can go to United Kingdom, I can go to Dubai, I can go to Africa, I can go to Malaysia, and I have submitter communities all over the world that I'm deeply connected with and I know very well intimately. And we've discussed at length various topics and are connected and deeply entrenched in our unified religion. If you have an alternative to this, I'd love to hear it. What does your community do? Amin K. How does your community promote universal unity and connect submitters all over the world? I'd love to hear it. Because if they're not doing it, then there's nothing to talk about, right?
I think we've talked about the subject in length, and one of the brothers wanted to talk about something else. I think you're extending this conversation. I think at this point, let other people talk about different topics that they like to talk about.
Sure, anyone can talk about any topic. I'm just going to mute myself. I'm listening carefully. Go.
Well, whoever the brother was that wanted to speak up and said that we have been speaking about this topic and we need another topic, then bring up a topic. Otherwise, we're all just going to end up leaving the VC or sitting here looking at each other.
I've missed
Yeah.
5 minutes. What's going on?
Well, I mean, there's some objection to continuing the same topic that we were talking on.
Quiet.
So Naveed said, okay, whoever wants to bring up another subject, bring it up. But nobody is speaking now. So I was saying whoever it was that was questioning while we're continuing on the same topic, then please bring up another topic so we can continue a discussion, but nobody's saying anything. Sister Brady,
is
do you have
worth-
something you want to discuss? Brother
It's
Elham, did
something
you have
quick.
something?
Can you hear me?
Dude, go ahead, brother
you.
dude.
No, it's Peter. Go ahead,
Hey,
Peter.
yo. Yeah, no, I mean, we should respect if someone says, "Look, I'm done talking about this." That we say, "Okay, we'll put it to rest." Otherwise, we might be repelling. So I think it's fine if I mean, it's kind of like spent, and then Ibrahim are spent talking about this. That we talk about something else. But yeah, the challenge is, yeah. Does anyone else have anything else they want to bring up to discuss?
Peace be
We
upon you
did
guys.
Hey, peace, brother. Good.
Thanks. I didn't get to listen to all the discussions, so if I'm going something wrong, please, like, sorry. I'd like to bring a topic if you want something to talk. Let's go with the question. How can we do unity among submitters? Also, there is, I think, two concepts. One is universal unity, and the other is submission, being the unified religion. So, do they work the same, or, like, for example, who is qualified to be in the universal unity? That's probably all humans. But who is qualified to be a submitter? We have criterias for that. Who are we supposed to be united with? Like, am I supposed to be united with a Quranist? Or am I supposed to be united with a submission that has a different understanding on a maybe important topic, or maybe not? If you go to that from our personal views, we may have different conclusions. So I suggest let's go from the basis of who are we supposed to be united with. So I'd like to hear you.
There's a quote. Let me see if I can pull it up. I think it's, man, they're good. Marshall. Basically, it says, "I'll unite with anyone in the cause of righteousness and against anyone in the against sin." I'm paraphrasing, but I think that's the message that I take away in regards to the Quran, and this is even in 88 and 89. It talks about that even the hypocrites that God acknowledges, yes, among the believers there's hypocrites, but if they're mobilizing in the cause of God, we can support each other in that. So that's kind of my thought. It's the bigger question though is, yeah, what's the framework that we use in order to God willing settle disputes? And I think because inevitably we're going to have disputes among believers. It's a fact. In Surah 49 verse 6 says, if two groups of believers are fighting, right, fights are going to happen. The question is, what is the outcome of settling disputes? Equalizer brought this up the other day. It's this aspect of, again, we have to have a way of escalating kind of disputes. So we say, okay, someone comes up with an ideology, we hash it out, we say, okay, we didn't come to a resolution. Hey, does the messenger have anything to say on this matter? And if he does, we go with that judgment. If he doesn't, then we're back to square one. We agree to disagree. And I think that's kind of the thing, because if we don't have this methodology as far as how we handle disputes, then it's just going to be, everyone has a million different interpretations or opinions, and there is no consistency. And inevitably, what ends up happening is someone says, "Look, why are you getting on my case regarding this? I see everything else the same as you except for this one thing." And someone else says, "Well, I see everything the same as you except for this other thing." And someone else says, has a different contingency. And inevitably, then it's like you basically have a bunch of people who have no consistent framework. And we just seen it. I mean, this isn't new to submission. You look at Protestantism. You look at the early Muslims. The ones who didn't have a coherent framework didn't last. They just keep fragmenting. I think in Christianity, there's some 70,000 sects, of Christianity. It's because each one basically has their own understanding, their own opinion, and they have no common framework to say, okay, how do we discern the truth from the falsehood, or how do we, reconcile or harmonize when we have these disputes?
Wow, so that's kind of a very important topic. So because all the religions have done the mistake of fragmenting, so how do we get out of this submission?
Not only is it
I think it's
very important, I don't think most people recognize how vitally important it is.
I think they just don't play it through. Like, even though they experience it for themselves, when it's a small group, you just kind of sweep it under the rug and say, okay, well, this person has this understanding, that person has this understanding. Let's just not talk about those, right? But then what we don't realize is that if we expand that pie, right? Because we're not just 5 people studying together, we're not just 100 people studying together. We're an entire community of submitters. If we're not able to figure out how to resolve disputes, how to basically move forward, what are those quote unquote red lines, then you're just going to have the infinite permutations. And the end of Appendix 2 really tells us, it's like, hey, this is God's mercy that He sends a messenger. I can pull that up.
Only
It
one
says it's a mercy
107.
from God.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to pull up the actual, so I'm not misquoting. Just give me a sec. I'll put it into the chat. Yeah, because I think what ends up happening is a lot of times people, they say, look, in my community, it's all, hunky dory and stuff. It's like, okay, well, you guys got a relatively small community. Despite that, there's a number of differences. What happens when that community increases? Because what most people do is they just don't address those points of contention. And it's like, look, as you include more and more people in the community, the number of points of contentions increases, you can say linearly. But we can't just have it where it's like, okay, look, no one bring up anything that might, offend someone. We can't talk about the direction of prayer. We can't talk about the fact that what salat is, like just the basic tenets of the religion. It gets very problematic. So this is from Appendix 2. It says, principal duties of God's messenger of the covenant. As stated in the Quran 381, God's messenger of the covenant shall confirm all the previous scriptures, all the scriptures which were delivered by all the prophets, and restore them to original purity. Mercy from God, 21:107. When the believers are faced with a problem, they develop a number of possible solutions, and this invariably leads to considerable bickering, disunity, and disarray. We learn from 2:151, 3:164, 21:107 that it is but mercy from God that He sends to us messengers to provide the final solutions for problems. We learn from 42:51 that God sends His messengers to communicate with us and to disseminate new information. Hence, the strong injunction in 465 and 80 to accept without the slightest hesitation the teachings delivered to us through God's messengers. Right? It's like people who basically they walk away from this methodology. They're really hindering their possibility of growth, and it does lead to a lot of bickering, disunity, and confusion.
What do you guys think? the referring to the messenger of covenant and the AI progression is going to have some challenges in the future. Do you guys think about that?
Say that again.
He's saying AI generated materials attributed to the messenger.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
Look, yeah, okay. To me, it's a funny thing. One, okay, what about the 30 years that this hasn't been an issue? You know, where are all these supposed submitters who had that concern? Because they've been saying this literally for the last 30 plus years.
No,
So to
going
me, I just see
forward.
it as a cop. No, yeah. Look, let me just address it, right? I see the people who bring up this argument really using it as a cop out. They're begging to basically be able to walk away from all the messenger's teachings. Okay. That said, the reality is, look, by God's leave, we don't have that problem as of today, right? Many of us had these, audios, the videos, the DVDs, right, the VHSs for years and years. And rather than saying, hey, let's instill these teachings from the messenger, let's figure out strong argumentations for why these are the correct answers, right? We have generations of submitters who basically have shot themselves in the foot and spent their entire life basically arguing against the very teachings of the messenger. Right? They're doing themselves a disservice by doing this. I agree with you. Yeah, in future generations, they're not going to be able to depend on this material, right? We can do all the encryption, the preservation we want, but it's like there's going to be that question: is this authentic? Okay, but to me, it's like, look, we have this short time period. Let's actually incorporate these lessons from the messenger inside our understanding. But no, most people refuse to do that, right? And I honestly think that they have a huge burden they're going to be having on themselves, because rather than spending these last 30 plus years studying this material, figuring out why these are the right answers, they spent their entire life breath basically arguing against it. They've been a net negative on the entire submission movement.
I concur with that. Yeah, so going forward, I think the question remains that we have a lot of audios now from past and some recent ones. So if in 5 years someone says, I found a new audio, then perhaps we need to be a little bit more skeptical, unless it's like we have to be a way of authenticating it before we
Look, if someone has original cassettes, right, I'd like to see them because I have the original cassettes.
But
if
yeah,
someone's coming here, yeah.
Yeah, but if you have the original cassette and I can say, can you give me the cassette so I can check it out? Then yeah, I have a cassette disc. But if you can just show me a picture of cassette, there's no.
But here's the thing: the audios are not saying anything that goes against the Quran. Everything Rashad is saying are possible interpretations of the Quran. Now, if Rashad comes up with a law outside of the Quran and the audio is questionable, right? Then we have an issue. But your hypothetical is, I'm sorry, it's just not very relevant because that's just not the case. And the amount of effort that goes into it, I think we take it casually. It's okay. Okay. So basically, in this hypothetical, Rashad is going to be preaching something against the Quran, clearly. Right? And we have a questionable source. It's like at that point, okay, bring me the audio. I'll do a forensic analysis on it. I'll take it to audio experts. They'll examine the sound waves and see if this is authentic or this is AI generated. Why don't we utilize what we have and resolve our differences? And this goes back to my question. What do you suggest we can do to bring unity and submission?
I don't know. I thought discussing things would obviously be a good idea. But
no. We've discussed with Quranists for 2 years.
Yeah, I know that, but I'm talking about within a submitter community. I'm not talking about Sunnis and Shias and Quranists. I'm talking about within the submitter community. Discussion is a good thing, but at some point, each one of us have to know that the belief will lie on someone's sincerity. Understand? So guidance comes from God and sincerity, and we cannot make it a personal matter. So
That's
just
fine, but the
yeah,
people that you're talking about refuse to talk in the first place.
yeah, I agree with you. So I mean,
Okay, so then it's not even a realistic example what you're giving.
I mean,
Anybody that wants to have a dispute, okay, let's talk about it. We had a recent example with Solomon Imdad. He had a dispute with us. His response, don't talk to them. Okay, so he's not adhering to the Quran. We didn't even get to the point of examining whether or not we're going to uphold the messenger's teachings. He's not willing to talk to us. So I would argue that all the people that you're talking about that have problems, most of them, 90% of the time, they don't want to talk at all. And then the other ones that are willing to talk, or at least some capacity, like Michael Jackson, then they are clearly going against the messenger's teachings. They say, we hear, but we disobey. And then you have people like Asar Khan, they refuse to talk. They only want to talk in comment section on Facebook and nonstop talking about how the messenger's teachings shouldn't be respected in this way. We shouldn't acknowledge them. We shouldn't consider them, this kind of thing. Okay, bring me somebody that actually accepts the messenger's teachings, and I'm more than happy to have a conversation with them. Probably 10 out of 10, we're going to get a result on things that actually matter. I genuinely believe this. I believe that if you uphold God's religion, you will get a positive result. And that's what we witness here every day. We're growing closer and closer together. So if you found anybody that's struggling, okay, bring them here. Because that's what I witnessed. Look, I believe God's system is perfect. He gives us good solutions to our problems. And 459 says this gives you the best solution. I trust it. Wholeheartedly, I believe it. So, if you have anybody that you think is contentious or has a problem or whatever, okay, put my approach to the test. Bring them here and let's see if I'm wrong.
no, I think the issue is not even bringing them here. They're not even willing to have a discussion about the topic.
Okay,
So
then they're out of the picture, right? So then God says they're not following the instructions. God says the believers consult. So automatically they're already out. So bring someone that's willing to obey this verse of consulting the believers. Then let's have a conversation about the topic. Then let's see if we make progress. Because I'm saying that pretty much always you're going to see progress. That's what I'm promising you, based on what I understand from God's commandments in the Quran. We've had a very high success rate for anyone that's willing to utilize this approach. For those who refuse to, then they fall out. And they stay behind. We're growing, God willing. God willing, I'm going to stay a part of this movement, but the train has departed. It's growing very fast. You haven't been here enough to even know there's so many wonderful submitters coming to this message every day. We're growing leaps and bounds. So the time to unite is now, not tomorrow, not later. Right now, we have to jump in right now and unite and go forward. Anyone wants to come, let them come. Anyone doesn't want to come, give them the invitation. They don't want to come, that's their loss. That's it. We don't have time for games anymore. We have to move. Right? We can't be stuck in old baggage and old, sinkholes. We're now doing TikTok lives. My account is going to be restored tomorrow, God willing. Literally, in 2 weeks, we converted like 5-6 people from just TikTok live for like a week, 2 weeks. All right. And when we all go together, we're strong. It creates commotion. It brings attention. This message can go viral at any moment. My goal and my objective is to create the infrastructure to intake process for this. Right? But if I still have to debate you on how we're supposed to look at the messenger's teachings, then we're not there yet. We're not ready for the intake. Because imagine 100 people show up today or tomorrow. 1,000 people show up next week. 1,000,000 people show up next month. What are we going to do about it? We have to have the right framework, infrastructure in place for this intake process. This is very important. What Peter said is very profound. Something that you think works for 5 people, that's not going to work for the whole world. This is a universal religion of submission for the entire planet. The system has to be workable for the whole world. Right? Someone running some isolated group with 5 people and forcing everyone to adhere to his understanding of the Quran, that's not going to work on a large scale. Even with 200 people, having an oligarchy, forcing, imposing understandings, and not allowing any dissent or discussion, that's not going to work either. That's why we have an open, transparent platform with a lot of research, analysis, study, discussion, back and forth, these kind of things. It's not personal when I tell somebody, hey, let's have a back and forth. It's not personal. It's about having progress in the conversation and actually get to conclusions. A lot of submitters, they're not really interested in solutions and conclusions. People just like to hear themselves talk. So everybody talks for 5-10 minutes each, and then we go back home and then we have nothing. That's meaningless. We're not here to waste time. We're here to move forward. Right? We develop our souls. We want to strive before the victory, then the opportunities to strive. That's it. So we can either unite and grow and establish, have a unified doctrine and move forward, or we could, be confused. If I asked you, hey, if you pray 3 times a day, you're a submitter, you say, well, I don't know. Okay, well, if you don't know if that person's a submitter, then you're not. Then you don't have a religion. You don't understand what God's religion is. Then it's useless. Then you can enjoy your own session with 2 people in it. That's just what that is. That's why a lot of people don't like when we talk about like this in the context of war, but it really is war. The messenger says we're in ideological warfare. It's a mental battle now. He says we don't use swords and bows and arrows and stuff, but it is still potent, if not more potent than physical warfare. A lot of submitters don't understand. They don't realize this. We're in the ideological battle. And there's a lot of credit to be had. There's a lot of benefits to gain. There's a lot of knowledge. There's a lot of growth, development. We can all unite and do really, really good things. This is fantastic. So, I don't know. Anybody else? There's 50 people here, 60 people here. I don't know how many people here. Somebody else. I'd love to hear more points of views.
Yeah, to add to it's like, look, this is an actual scalable methodology. It's consistent with the Quran. It's not us picking and choosing, going with our own opinion. It's saying, look, if we have a dispute, what is salat? We say, okay, we have a messenger by God's leave. He explained that salat is not, following closely. It's not 3 times a day. It's not Allahu Kabir. It's not these, praying north, west, whatever, right? All these multitude of differentiations. It's this one thing. Anyone who's a genuine submitter says, okay, we hear and we obey. We move on. To me, if we say that no, every interpretation is valid, we see even in the life of Rashad, it was funny, the chunk of his life, he's fighting Sunnis. In the last year after his announcing of messengership, he's dealing with the hypocrites internally. That it's the same thing. You look at Muhammad, the onset of his life, he's fighting the Quraysh. The last piece, it's basically internal hypocrisy. It's the same thing. People they just want to follow their opinion. At the end of the day, they're not happy that God sent referee to resolve these matters. So if we have a dispute, we say, okay, hey, what's the ref's call on this? Oh, okay, the ref made a decision on this. That's the ruling. Great, move on. No, they want to say, no, my interpretation of jinn companion, or even what the function of the messenger is. Like he wrote up about this. He talked about this stuff in detail. And if the messenger has a ruling on it, it's our job to say, okay, we hear and we obey. It's a lot of ego and wanting justification for our own personal opinions. And everyone has. That's the funny thing. They say, okay, well, look, I agree with Rashad on everything, but this one thing, he's just off the mark on. And then the next guy comes and says, okay, I agree with Rashad, but this other thing, and it's just, again, then you have nothing, right? If everyone can pick and choose, which kind of quote unquote legal ruling they want to abide by and which one they want to reject, then there is no function of the messenger. All someone can do is say, well, that guy's off the mark, but my contention with the messenger is valid. Does anyone else have anything else they want to add to this? We can give updates for the week as far as just some of the new material that's came out otherwise.
Just something that I was thinking about is I mean, nothing huge or anything, but just the fact that Rashad even said that his messengership wasn't just a test for all of us, but it was also a test for him to accept that he was the messenger.
Yeah, it's the very function of a messenger. It's just it's interesting. Again, no one doubts when the messengers of the past came what their function is. But every time, we read the verse when the messenger comes to their people, they say, okay, well this guy's different from them. Those other ones, they were respectable. You should hear what they have to say and rule. If they tell you to do something or they have a judgment, you just have to accept it. But this guy didn't know, and it's always the same. We see it with Moses, right? You see the lack of respect the children of Israel had for Moses. Every time he asked them for something or he commanded them to do something, they questioned him, they doubted him, they tried to subvert around him. Jesus is the same, Muhammad is the same, Rashad's no different. All the messengers do the same thing. The thing is, people it's like you have this progression. Some flat out reject, and then the ones who claim to accept, the question is they accept conditionally. They partially accept the message. They have their own understandings and say, look, unless the messenger agrees to my understandings, they're not a messenger. Like, then what's the point of, God sending a messenger? It's for us to kill our egos.
I know from experience, just looking back on, my life and, and my ego, when somebody wants to tell me like how to do something or whatever, I can feel like ego inflation and how, I've got my own opinions. I've got my own, like, it's easy to make that stance as, like, well, this is my life. I know what it's like. You don't, that sort of thing. And that's the culture that we're living in too. With my job, I did a training the other day for youth mental health, and we were going over like statements that are no-nos, things that you should say. Like, you have to really be careful how you word things when you're talking to people, especially people with mental health issues. And to say, like, especially if somebody's in a moment of like panic or just really emotionally charged and whatnot, to say to somebody, I totally understand what you're going through, and then relate with them on a similar experience, a lot of them might get offended by that because they say, no, you don't understand. You don't know what I'm going through. We all, not we all, but it's easier to, disregard what somebody is saying because of our own interpretations of how we're perceiving our lives. So I could see how Rashad being, or any of them being a messenger, would be a huge test for humanity.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate what Peter said. I thought it was really interesting that um, in the beginning verses, you don't really hear about hypocrites and stuff, but then when you get to the end of Muhammad's life and the end of the revelation of the Quran, chapter 9, which is the last major revelation, it's suddenly talking a whole bunch about hypocrite stuff. Why is that? Right? And the same with the Rashad's life, he doesn't talk about hypocrites at the beginning, and then at the end of his messengership, he starts talking a lot about the hypocrites and stuff. Why is that? Right? It's because a whole bunch of people join, and then there's hypocrites among them. That's just what that is. So it all goes back to adhering to the messenger's teachings, adhering actually to God's instructions through the messenger correctly. That's really what it comes down to. It's the correct paradigm.
Maybe because the end of their messengership was coming to a close, or their life was coming to a close. So, when that happens, maybe because the hypocrites would probably maybe feel more comfortable to come out and start, debating amongst themselves and the believers, their ideas on the correct way.
I don't think it's necessarily their unwillingness. I think it's just not a primary concern earlier on because we're focused on growing and developing and coming together and this kind of thing. It's just even if people have disputes or whatever, it's just not a. It's not in the limelight. It's not a big thing. Right? And even now, I'm hearing from people that are surprised. Submitters that I thought were great submitters for last year or 2 years or 3 years. Now they're telling me, well, look, I never understood this hypocrite stuff. Now it's coming to my attention. Now, why is it coming to my attention now? The last 6 months or last 4 months or whatever. It's like, that's just what it is. Like the messenger of the covenant's time. It's like, beginning is just saying, okay, worship God alone. Everybody come together, reject hadith, whatever. Okay, now you got all these people lined up that are not going to go to hadith. Okay, now what? Now you have to figure out what the religion is. Right? So now there's people that are forced to reckon. We had this conversation yesterday. Hey, the messenger says touch your ears in your salah. Would you do it? And they're saying, well, I don't know. What if we obey too much? Is it worshiping the messenger if we obey the messenger too much? Isn't that idolization, whatever, all this kind of thing? It's like, look, he says do this, just do it. That's done. Right? But if we cannot say this, if we can't say, hey, the messenger said it, we just accept it, then we don't really have a baseline. Then the guy came in here and is trying to come up with theories about Mary and what Quran is, and then I've heard people say, well, look, anyone that calls themselves a submitter, then yeah, everyone's a submitter. Doesn't matter if they believe in prayer or no prayers or whatever. Then that's just broken down. Everything's shattered. There's nothing left at that point. Man. Sounds
Navid,
great.
how about that?
Broken.
Navid, how about that verse? The God said when they got the information, they think they know a lot, then they dispute among themselves. How about that verse? Happy Father's Day to all of daddies they are alive.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I don't know. Anybody want to address your question? What does it mean when they disputed when the messenger came to them? What does that mean, guys? Anybody want to answer this?
What does it mean that they dispute? I mean, we're
It says
seeing
they
it.
didn't dispute until the knowledge came to them. Something like that, right? I think
Yeah. We're seeing it, right? It's like basically when the messenger is there, he can, by God's leave, keep some level of order, and then afterwards, it's just gets back to a level of chaos.
Salam alaikum. I have a question, but I'd like to preface it with something that I actually saw on the internet on TikTok the other day. There's a Muslim, I believe his last name is Bustami. He he makes lives on the internet, and he happened to be giving his understanding of Surah 2, verse 54, where the people of Moses were enjoined to kill their egos. And I was shocked. I really was shocked. And he actually on the internet, he told the audience that verse was commanding. Moses said to his people, you shall kill yourselves. He actually told them that. Yeah, you shall kill yourselves. And he went on to talk about how there were hundreds of Bani Israel who this command was for them to kill themselves, and this was the means by which they could repent to the Creator. And I was kind of saying to myself, individuals interested in Islam, people who want to convert, oh no, wow, that's a total contradiction to the Quran. With that said, I'd just like to get an update on appraisal. Where are we in terms of trying to disseminate the Messenger of the Covenant's translation? Where are we in terms of trying to broadcast and communicate Rasad's translation to more and more people so that they will have this alternative rather than many of them relying, so to speak, on these totally distorted, warped interpretations of the Quran. Any suggestions, any updates? Anybody? Thank you.
Hey, Assalamu alaikum. I shared an article on this, Surah 2, verse 54, how they twist the translation and the word anafsakum to
Yes,
say that this
okay.
is go kill yourselves, right? That's like the literal meaning. And then they extrapolate that to mean, oh, go kill the wrongdoers among you. And we've done podcast episodes on this, videos on this, showing errors in the translations using this example.
Okay.
So, you know, we are doing the part. The thing is, it's just there's, you know, 2 billion traditional Muslims who unfortunately believe this nonsense. They
Right,
just,
right,
you know, so it's we're chipping
right.
away, but the material's there, and we've debated a number of people just on this. And it's funny, they know that their interpretation is ridiculous, but because this is what their ulama tell them, and they just have to accept it.
Thank you. Oh, subhanAllah. Thank you. Yeah, that is totally irrational and ridiculous. You know, those kinds of interpretations.
Unfortunately, I mean, this is in the Bible, right? This is one of the distortions of many. Like one, they say that Aaron is the one who built the golden calf, and then they say that yes, after this, that they basically killed the evildoers among them. You know, it's just unfortunate. The thing is, it breaks God's system in the concept that there is no compulsion of religion, and they actually use this verse to say, look, it's justified regarding apostasy. You know, so it's funny how Satan kind of uses this distortions to push, you know, his false understandings, and you know, the Muslims are unfortunately too blinded to pick up on this ruse.
Yes, yes. Alhamdulillah, praise God, brother Peter. I found the video you made about, I think, the Ritter Wars after the Prophet Muhammad left. Several
Oh, that was
generations.
Jonathan. That was Jonathan. Jonathan made that.
Jonathan, I apologize.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Jonathan, that was very informative. That was very helpful in understanding how they composed and manipulated and came up with all of these so-called beliefs about apostasy and killing of people that they designated as apostates. But that type of information is very informative, alhamdulillah. And what you're doing is very informative. We as you all know, we want to continue to try as much as possible to broadcast and spread these messages and expand our forum, you see, so that people are aware of the truth rather than all of these opinions and conjecture.
Yeah, it's basically you know, it's a blessing to be able to do this, right? Is we don't have scholarship underneath us, right? So we have all these, you know, proofs that the messenger gave us, but it's our duty to build up these arguments and, you know, broadcast this out for other submitters. And, you know, we slowly chip away, knock down those dominoes one at a time. Because if each person has to go and figure out for themselves, why did Rashad translate it this way? What's the justification? You know, it creates a lot of burden. But if one person says, "Hey, okay, I'm going to tackle this issue," figures it out to at least to have a solid framework to refute the traditionalist interpretation, it just makes it easier for the next person to go and focus on something else, right? They don't have to go and spend their cycles digging through, you know, this one thing. They can use this refutation and then, you know, use their efforts to go and figure out other issues that need to be addressed.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you.
Hey, if it's okay, I'm going to share just some of the other material from this week that, God willing, if people find useful, they can utilize it as well. So there was a couple new articles since last week's study. One is regarding, this is kind of crude, but kind of funny at the same time. is Christian castration. So in Christianity, the early Christians, a lot of them believe that from a passage in the book of Matthew, that Jesus was saying that if someone is a eunuch, right, castrated, that they were closer to God. And this became a prevalent practice, so much so that they had the first canon in the Council of Nicaea, and also even predating that, was that if anyone who castrates themselves, that they can't be part of the clergy. So it's that big of an issue. So that's an article regarding that. The other one is this something similar to it. So in Surah 17, verse 88, God says in the Quran that if the human and jinns banded together, they can never produce a Quran similar, like the literal Arabic is mithla, similar to it. Okay, and what's funny is they have a hadith. This is a very famous hadith. It goes against, people follow Quran alone, that the Prophet was given the Quran and something similar to it. Okay, and then it goes on to say, beware of the one who tells you if it's in the Quran, if it says it's prohibited, then it's prohibited. If it's permissible, then it's permissible. And then it starts rattling off these, prohibitions that aren't found in the Quran. And it's just a comparative analysis between how faulty this, the Hadith corpus is compared to the consistency of the Quran. So I put the article, and I'm going to share the video. One sec. And God bless McClicken for that nice meme. Yeah, so there's a corresponding video, and then the article. The other one is it's so funny. It's in the subtitle in 6944 that Rashad says that the Prophet Muhammad was prohibited from spreading any teachings outside of the Quran. Okay, and if you read the Arabic, it's very harsh, right? That he could not preach, like the concept of him having teachings outside of the Quran goes completely against that. God says that he would have severed him by the aorta, he would have seized him by the right hand, right? It's very strong language. And then to think that, oh, by the way, he had, millions of these teachings outside of the Quran goes against the very verses of the Quran. So that's a article in regards to that. And then lastly, I made a new Git book. So this is a kind of a depository. Of just arguments for the topic of Muhammad not being illiterate. So this comes up a lot, and rather than pulling up the various articles, it's all cataloged here in this one Git book. So I got a video that goes over each of the arguments and the reasoning, and then if you click on the menu, it has it broken down. So Muhammad did not receive a physical miracle. Muhammad was a merchant, so he knew the alphabet. The 6 occurrences of the word ummi to show that it doesn't mean illiterate, it means Gentile. And then other arguments as well. So that's in the Git book. So